My name is Mike Terry. I'd like to welcome you all to this regular monthly meeting of the Cobb County Planning Commission. We are an advisory board appointed by the Board of Commissioners, and it's our job to investigate every zoning request that comes to the county, and then we'll hear those cases here today. We'll make a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. We'll take a vote and make a recommendation, but all final and binding decisions always rest with the Board of Commissioners, and that vote will be taken at their regular monthly meeting, which is typically, let's see, when is the next one, John? December the 16th will be the next regular meeting. It's our custom to invite various members of the local clergy to come and open our meeting with some appropriate words or a prayer. And it's my pleasure at this time to introduce Dr. David Mayo from the First Presbyterian Church in Marietta. David, if you'll make your way forward. As he comes forward and gets ready to present to us, I'll remind you that at the end of his remarks will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Officer Ott from the Cobb County Police Department. When that occurs, if you'll stand as you're able, we'll have our pledge. Pastor Mayo.
Thank you, Mr. Terry. Scripture tells us that our God is a God of creative ability. In the beginning, God created, and it's in our DNA as people created in His image to have that creative genius within us as well. Let us come before this creative God in prayer. Almighty God, as people who bear your image, we are moved to create and design and plan. It is indeed in our DNA. It is one of the ways that you have put your spark of eternity within us, for you are the grand architect. When we establish environments of beauty, culture, integrity, and health, where people can live, work, and recreate, we are fulfilling your purpose to bring order and not confusion. The work of this commission cast a long and influential shadow on this community. We pray that the shadow will bring blessing to all who fall under it. Grant guidance and discernment for the business at hand. Give collective wisdom to these commissioners, a wisdom that exceeds any individual, so that working together they may discern what is best for all, and instill a desire to excel in the work of this day, so that all may be served and encouraged through the deeds that are done here. We ask all of these things from you, the God of grace and mercy. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Mayo, and thank you, Officer Ott. First on the agenda this morning will be our consent agenda. These are cases that the Planning Commission and the zoning staff have fully investigated, and we are satisfied that all the pertinent issues have been resolved and for which there is no known opposition. Our zoning administrator, Mr. John Peterson, this is John raising his hand here. John will read these cases one at a time into the record and will ask if there's anyone present that is in opposition or wishes to make any comment on a particular case. If there is, we may elect to pull that case from the consent agenda, and then we would hear it in its regular numerical sequence. Next, we will hear cases that were either held or continued from a previous hearing. And lastly, we will hear our regular cases, again in their regular numerical sequence. Applicants will be asked to come forward and identify themselves, be sworn in before they present their case. Then the opposition will be asked likewise to identify themselves, be counted for the record, be sworn in, and give their testimony. When a case number is called by Mr. Peterson, if you wish to address the board, you'll be asked to come forward and be sworn in by our officer of the day. Jason sits on the front row. Jason, raise your hand. Present yourself to him to be sworn in, if you will. He'll also ask you to sign his book. That's so we get the correct spelling of your name. Be sure you sign in there. And be aware, this is most important, be aware that each person, each side, I should say, gets 10 minutes to present their case. That's not 10 minutes per person, that's 10 minutes per side. I have to remind people of that every time because we tend to forget that. And remember, as you speak, there's no rebuttal process at that time. However, we may call people back up to clarify an issue or to answer questions that we may have. Mr. Peterson, what else do you have for us today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are some cases on today's agenda which have been continued or withdrawn, will not be heard today. First case that will not be heard and that is withdrawn is rezoning case Z92, Cotton States Premier Properties LLC. That case has been withdrawn by the applicant and will not be heard today. Additionally, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I had a request late yesterday regarding SLUP 19 West Cobb Sports Complex. The applicant does wish to withdraw that without prejudice, and we would need the board to vote on that. But before we vote on that, can we get a show of people here who are opposed to SLUP 19? Just raise your hands.
Jason, let's get a count just for the record. So keep your hands up if you're here for that case and you're in opposition to it. Let's let Jason get an exact count.
Got it. Mr. Moore, please, up here. Let the record show there are 51 people here opposed to this request.
Good morning. You want to, is this a staff? I'm sorry, this is your withdrawal, right? Why don't you go ahead and ask us for that, and
Certainly.
we'll have a vote on that.
Certainly.
Introduce yourself first.
Sure. On behalf of the applicant and owner, I'm Kevin Moore. And yesterday, we submitted a letter requesting that the application be withdrawn without prejudice. In the event the Planning Commission does not honor that request, we would still have the application be withdrawn. So we believe that the Warner family has gone to great lengths to try to conduct studies, have a community meeting, done a lot of work bringing this forward. And we're requesting that we withdraw without prejudice, simply from the standpoint of we don't believe it's necessary for there to be a punitive aspect for them asking. But certainly we would honor the Planning Commission's request or decision, but our request is that it be withdrawn without prejudice, but otherwise it would stand as withdrawn. Thank you.
Okay, folks, what that means is all of you that came here expecting to hear testimony or give testimony, that's not going to happen. This case has been withdrawn, or it will be soon. So this is in Mr. Hovey's district, and he has asked for a moment or two to address this issue. So let's hear from Bob before we do anything else. Bob?
Yes, and first off, either John or Joe, would you tell the audience what with and without prejudice means, please?
If the case is withdrawn with prejudice, it cannot be resubmitted for 1 year. If it's withdrawn without prejudice, then the applicant can resubmit it immediately if they revise the plan.
Thank you very much. And let me assure you all that I didn't know about this far enough ahead of time to keep you in bed this morning. I would have tried if I had a long time. There are two parts to this. Well, first off, the withdrawal, I think we're all in agreement that that's the way we want to go. On the question of prejudice, I think there are really two parts to this. This is a bit unique, but for a long time, the opposition has supported the idea of residential development on this property. And it might be residential development that would require some kind of a zoning action. And so if we were to impose prejudice on everything here, that would mean they couldn't do what the opposition's asking them to do for a year. The second part of it is, of course, we haven't heard the applicant's responses to the issues that were presented at our last hearing, nor have we heard their final presentation. The case hasn't been heard, and therefore there's no way that we could know how this case would actually come out if we had a full hearing. But we have had extensive writings in the 60-day interim from the opposition, long emails, very detailed study. People have gone around and surveyed parks to find out how many empty slots there were last season in baseball. I mean, the extent of the public work on this is very, very broad. And so I think there are grounds for considering applying prejudice to the part of this that has to do with the specific zoning that was asked for, this permit. Now, let me just, for the record, review a couple of those. Okay. Let me just review a couple of those grounds so that I'm not flying loose here. First is the question of whether this is a community center or not. The application is for a community center under a very specific code that says public community centers such as YWCAs, YMCAs, girls clubs, boys clubs, and this proposal is much bigger than what we commonly think about those. The activity is not so much community as it is also regional, because there would be teams coming in and out to play. The area around here is unique in all of Cobb County. It's over 1,000 acres of rural residential. It's over 2.5 miles east to west. It's a mile north to south plus. It's built out. It's not speculative on a land use plan or something like that. People own this. There are horses there, llamas there, and these things. So the area around this is another, I think, issue that's a ground for some prejudice, that this is not something that should come back quickly. It may come back, but it should come back after very considerable attention. Among some other grounds are we're sitting between two churches, and we want to impose an intense activity on Sunday between two large churches. The traffic study has not been altogether favorable. The level of service on the key intersection is D, and the level of service on an associated intersection is D one way, F the other way. And a 32,400 square foot building is really quite big compared to this area. So in summary, it's plain that there are many citizens that don't want the intensity of this complex. Zoning's all about locations, and an advanced baseball operation could be a real asset to Cobb if it was the right place. I know the applicants worked hard. Mr. Moore made the point, and I also would tell you the applicant has hired and acquired assistance from some of the best in Cobb County. The traffic study, the engineering, and these kind of things, these are fully professional people. But I think the applicant needs to take some time to let the wounds in the neighborhood heal before bringing any kind of an athletic complex type thing or a commercial zoning application. I think we need time to let that all settle down, both sides to reconsider. So it would be unfair to prohibit the residential zoning activities that most everyone seems to be in favor. But it would be unwise for us to rush forward and come back in with another application quite like the one we just saw, without a cooling off period, so that people on both sides can get their hands about what they're really doing. And some of the very significant questions about the location and the special nature of McEachern Farms be brought to bear. So federal commissioners, I'd like to move that we approve approval of the request to withdraw SLUP 19 without prejudice for residential housing proposals, but with prejudice for an athletic field project and with prejudice for any commercial rezoning. That would be my motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
I'll second it for a
We'll
question.
have some discussion. So we have a second
I'm gonna
by
ask-
Ms. Williams.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm going to ask the county attorney, is that motion legal?
The procedures that we have do not allow for a split in the prejudice period. And I say that reluctantly in this case because Mr. Hobie is probably one of our most knowledgeable planning commissioners, no offense to any of y'all, and it's obvious he's
Wait a
given
minute.
this. I hope I still have a job after that. It's obvious that he's given this a great deal of thought, and to the extent he was able to, consulted with a lot of the folks out there. But unfortunately, our procedures do not allow for a split prejudice period. So it would either need to be with or without. Because if you stop and think about it, and I'm analyzing this as I talk to you because this is all new. You're kind of making a you're making almost a future zoning decision by doing that, and I think that would run afoul of the state zoning procedures law. Having said all that, again, I don't normally say this, but I think Mr. Hovey we owe this to him. He's obviously worked on this so hard, and I think that's a very creative solution. Unfortunately, I just don't think the law would allow us to do that.
Okay, any other discussion?
Since I seconded for discussion, and I think there's a lot that has to be done on this application, and I think that this tract of land is always gonna be in the spotlight because we're always gonna be battling something where it's a subdivision or where it's a commercial development. And I think the best course of action that I can see would be to reject it with prejudice so that you could get some applicants together with the homeowners that could come up with a residential RSL, some kind of a plan that would be more than ball fields. So that would be my suggestion.
I'll modify.
Okay, Bob?
Mr. Chairman, with permission of section, I'll modify my motion to move approval of the request to withdraw SLUP 19 with prejudice.
Okay, so we have a revised motion. Do we have a second to that motion? We do have a second to that motion. Any further discussion? This area truly holds one of the few remaining truly rural areas in Cobb County. We have lots of large properties, 5 acres and up, some much bigger, small farms, farm animals, gardens, and that sort of thing. We just don't have a lot of that left. Development of this type, in my opinion, I totally agree with Bob. I think it would chip away at that way of life that these people moved to that area to take advantage of. And I think it was the wrong thing for that area, totally. I think it would be disruptive for all the reasons that Bob mentioned, from traffic to light to all the rest of it, and I fully support Bob's motion. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? So it is withdrawn, so folks, we will not have any further discussion on that case. If you're here for that case and if you choose to leave, would you please do so quietly? Don't gather at the back to talk. If you're going to discuss it, please go outside to do that. We're being televised, and it will be very disruptive to us if you do that, so leave quietly.
AT&T is not catching us.
They are, yeah, they are. That was taken care of. Okay, well, all right, okay.
It's like having one side of the hearing.
While those folks are leaving, Mr. Peterson, you have any other instructions, telephones, cell phones, that sort of thing?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you go ahead with that?
There are 2 cases on today's agenda which have been continued by the staff and will not be heard, or the Planning Commission. First case is rezoning case Z2, Isaacson Living Communities LLC. That case has been continued until the February 3rd, 2015 zoning hearing, so that case will not be heard today. Additionally, SLEP 14, Municipal Communications LLC. That case was continued by the staff and will not be heard until the February 3rd, 2015 Planning Commission zoning hearing. Mr. Chairman and Board, there is one case on today's agenda which has requested a continuance. Is the applicant here for rezoning case Z8601 LLC? The applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to this rezoning case? Let the record show there are 2 people here opposed. Mr. Chairman and Board, the applicant is asking this to be continued for 30 days, or not 30 days, until the February zoning cycle, so they can work
Give me
on
the
it.
number again.
Z86.
86, okay, gotcha. Let me, if I could, before Parks, we get to you. SLUB 14 was a cell tower located just off Collins Drive. That was my case. We had a very serious fire in the townhomes located adjacent to that. And many of those people had indicated to me that they were ones who wanted to come and testify today, but given the seriousness of the fire, they're dealing with much more difficult situation, and so we did decide to delay that until February at their request, and I think that's the appropriate thing to do.
Good morning.
Good morning.
For the record, my name is Parks Huff, a law firm of Sam's Larkin Huff and Valley, and I represent the applicant of Z86. And we ask this be tabled until the February cycle because we want to be able to make some adjustments to the site plan. We had a community meeting a couple of weeks ago and had some input from the community, and I let the representatives of MIC know that we were asking for this today, and I think a lot of folks that would be here have already gotten the word that we were going to be asking for it to be continued to February.
Okay. Mr. Goff, this is in your area. You want to make a motion for us?
Yeah, I certainly appreciate the applicant working with the community. We had a great community meeting a couple weeks ago, and I think they're taking a lot of those considerations in and need more time to work on it. So I'll make a motion that we approve the continuance until our February hearing.
Yeah, let's do that. Is anyone here wishing to give testimony, opposition or otherwise, on Z86? Anyone? We have one. Do you have something you need to tell us? If you do, come on up and get sworn in. Let's hear from you very quickly before we go to the motion.
I think it was always our policy that we don't have a public hearing, but if they're not opposed to the
Well,
holding
we'll
of it,
find
is
out.
that not the
We'll
correct way?
find- we'll find
Mr.
out.
Attorney?
Okay.
Are you opposed to continuing? Do you want the case heard, or is continuing it until February okay?
Well, that'll be fine, but I just, well, the concerns that we have.
You need to come up to the podium. We're not going to take testimony on the case, but we do want to continue this to February.
Yes, see, this came up 10 years ago, and now main
And we're not going to
concern-
take any
All right,
testimony
but-
on the case.
All right, well, we have some concerns
What's his
because
name?
my property bumps
Okay,
up.
give us your
to-
name for the record.
Vincent Mason.
Okay, Vincent, go ahead.
My property bumps up to where they're gonna build at, and I got a few concerns that I want to make sure that get heard, that's all.
We'll hear it in February, and you can certainly come back then, and we'll be glad to hear from you.
All right.
Okay?
Maybe the attorney could get his name and number and get with him till
And I know he
February.
has.
You see the gentleman sitting right there on the front row. Why don't you touch base with him? That's a great idea. Parks, you want to talk to that gentleman? Give him your card. Go ahead if you want
You
to.
want me to make a motion yet? I make a motion that we continue Z86 until our February hearing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to continue Z86 to the February hearing cycle. All in favor? That's 5-0. What else, John?
I would like to ask the people who are left in the audience to please turn your cell phones off or turn the volume down. They do interfere with the broadcast and presentations. So if you have a cell phone, please turn the volume down. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to start the consent agenda.
At our last hearing, we had a real problem with some of our communications because there were lots of cell phones on. We have a wireless system, so when you leave those things on, it does interfere with the broadcast, so I would ask you to just turn them off for a while. If you need to make a call or take a call, you can go out back. Okay. John, what's our first case, please?
Yes, sir. Cobb County Planning Commission zoning hearing consent agenda for December 2nd, 2014. Rezoning case Z89. Ken Aaronhold requests a rezoning from GC to LRO for the purpose of a dental office in land lot 595 of the 16th district. The property is located on the northeast side of King Jack Drive, west of Sandy Plains Road. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on October 2nd, 2014, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Addition to match the existing structure and materials and architecture. Landscape buffer plan to be approved by the county arborist. Fire department comments and recommendations. Water and sewer division comments and recommendations. Stormwater management division comments and recommendations. And Cobb DOT comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezone case Z89? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Rezoning case Z90, Magellan Pipeline Company, LP, request rezoning from GC, HI, and R20 to HI for the purpose of petroleum operations in land lots 839 and 864 of the 19th district. The property is located on the west side of Anderson Farm Road, south of Powder Springs Road, on the northerly side of Ewing Road, at the terminus of Elm Street, and at the terminus of Ash Street. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on October 2nd, 2014, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Maximum height of storage spheres up to 110 feet. Storage spheres to be painted a muted color and not to be used for signage or advertising purposes other than identification or other markings required by federal, state, or local regulations. Allowance of 24 operation, staffing of site, spill containment plan, noise, air pollution abatement plans, and fire prevention, evacuation, safety plans to be approved by staff. Fire department comments and recommendations, water and sewer division comments and recommendations, stormwater management division comments and recommendations, Cobb DOT comments and recommendations, and the owner developer to enter into a development agreement pursuant to OCGA 367113 for dedication of system improvements to mitigate traffic concerns. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z90? Well, let the record show there's one person opposed.
Okay.
So we'll pull that off consent.
Let's pull that one off consent. I think we need to do that. So we will hear that case, and we'll take your testimony in just a moment.
Rezoning case Z93, Good Samaritan Help Center of Cobb Incorporated. Request rezoning from GC to CRC for the purpose of flex office space, educational instructional space, potential retail component, which may be a pharmacy or apothecary, in land lot 208 of the 17th District. The property is located at the north intersection of Austell Road and Roberta Drive. Staff recommends approval of the rezoning, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on October 6, 2014, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Allowable uses are offices, retail pharmacy use, educational or instructional use. Letter from Mr. Garvis L. Sams Jr. dated November 18, 2014, not otherwise in conflict with these recommendations. Water Sewer Division comments and recommendations. Stormwater Management Division comments and recommendations. And Cobb DOT comments and recommendations. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z93? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Moving into the special land use permits, SLUP 22, Magellan Pipeline Company LP, requests a special land use permit for the purpose of complementing area petroleum operations and enhancing gasoline supply in land lots 839 and 864 of the 19th District. The property is located on the west side of Anderson Farm Road, south of Powder Springs Road, on the northerly side of Ewing Road, at the terminus of Elm Street and at the terminus of Ash Street. Staff recommends approval of the application, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on October 2nd, 2014, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Maximum height of storage spheres up to 110 feet. Maximum storage spheres to be painted a muted color and not to be used for signage or advertising purposes other than identification or other markings required by federal, state, or local regulations. Allowance of 24 operation and staffing of site, spill containment plan, noise and air pollution abatement plans, and fire prevention, evacuation, safety plans to be approved by staff. Fire department comments and recommendations, water and sewer division comments and recommendations, stormwater management division comments and recommendations, and Cobb DOT comments and recommendations. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 22?
I think he's standing out in the hall talking
Yeah,
to
he
the
stepped
applicant.
down and
We'll just pull
speaking
that
with
off
the
consent
attorney,
also,
so
since
that
it's pulled
needs to be
out.
pulled off consent as well.
Okay. SLUP 23, Zach Friesner, CESO Inc., request a special land use permit for the purpose of compressed natural gas truck fueling station in land lot 832 of the 17th District. The property is located on the north side of Plant Atkinson Road, east of North Church Lane. Staff recommends approval, subject to the following conditions. Site plan received by the zoning division on October 10, 2014, with the district commissioner approving minor modifications. Canopy sign elevations received by the zoning division on November 13, 2014. Stormwater management division comments and recommendations, and Cobb DOT comments and recommendations. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to SLUP 23? Let the record show there's no one opposed, and that completes the consent agenda, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners.
Okay, so we have two items pulled from the consent agenda, Z90 and SLUP 22, which are really one and the same, so we will hear that case in its regular sequence. Z89, Z93, and SLUP 23 remain on consent agenda. So can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to approve the consent agenda, but I have an addition to Z93.
All right, sir, go ahead.
I'd like to add to that motion, or that stipulation, the normal district commissioner authorities that we use, our standard paragraph, which I'll read very quickly just to get it in the record. The district commissioner shall have the authority to approve minor modifications as the development proposal proceeds through plan review and thereafter, excepting for those that A, increase the density on the site, B, reduce the size of an approval buffer adjacent to a property that is zoned the same or in a more restrictive zoning district, C, relocate a structure closer to the property line of an adjacent property that is zoned the same or in a more restrictive zoning district, D, increase the height of the building that is adjacent to a property that is zoned in the same or a more restrictive zoning district, and E, change access locations to different roadways. And Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add that to the stipulations that have been placed.
Okay, so that's on Z93, so that will be amended to include the changes that Bob just proposed. Do we have a second to the motion? We have an approval and a second. All in favor of the motion? Okay, 5-0 for approval. Okay, John, what's first on the regular agenda?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Rezoning case Z82, Kroger Company, request rezoning from PSC and R20 to CRC for the purpose of adding a fuel center to the existing Kroger Center in land lots 467, 468, 469, and 470 of the 16th District. The property is located on the south side of Shalford Road and on the east side of Johnson's Ferry Road. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezone case Z82? Let the record show there's one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Morning, Mr. Sams.
Morning, Mr. Chairman.
Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. For the record, my name's Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff, and Bally, and represent the Kroger Company. Also represent Shallowford Falls LLC and/or branch properties that are the owners of the shopping center, Shallowford Falls, in which this Kroger is located. I have with me today, of course, representatives of both. We also have a traffic engineer with us from A&R Engineering who did a traffic report, a traffic analysis actually, and we can respond to any questions you may have regarding operational issues with respect to the fueling center and, of course, the loss of some of the parking spaces that we've had from an operational perspective. I'd also like to introduce, just for purposes of the record, a new attorney with our firm, Mr. Adam Rosen, who's here with us today. I had a chance to introduce him to you and want to thank you for speaking with him and allowing him to be here with me. I hope he takes my place, but not anytime soon. The property at issue shown here on your monitors, this is an approximate 14-acre tract of land. You can see it's located at the intersection of Johnson Ferry and Shallowford Road, south side of Shallowford Road. It's been developed, currently known as the Shallowford Falls Shopping Center. It's in a neighborhood activity center under your future land use map and has been for quite some time. You'll remember that this is an application that was continued from your last month's cycle at my request. As it got down near the wire, it appeared that there were answers to questions that needed to be provided. There were stipulation letters that needed to be done. There were revised documents that needed to be submitted, and the traffic analysis needed to be completed. And Kroger had just run out of time, so they got me involved. At that time, you were kind enough to grant the continuance until today. Since that time, we've met with area residents. We've met with representatives of the East Cobb Pacific Association. We met with Representative Brooks Chadwick, who you recall recently rezoned the 14-acre tract next door for residential. And we submitted a stipulation letter dated November the 21st, and then a supplemental stipulation letter that was submitted yesterday to add some additional STIPs. This property was originally rezoned PC and R20 back in 1979. It was a 1978 rezoning that was denied, and it went to court, one of the Sunil zoning cases in Cobb County, subsequent to Barrett versus Hamby. But since that time, this shopping center has gone through a number of permutations, including another business agenda item in 1999 and then another one in 2012. Neither of which required a rezoning from the PSC classification, which of course you have phased out. So now that Kroger wants to add the fueling center, as you see on the left side of the site plan being shown, it does require rezoning to a classification, and the one we're requesting is community retail commercial. So the rezoning would be from PSC and CRC, PSC to CRC and R20. And when I say R20, in the 1979 settlement of litigation from the court, you can see the strip to the east, and the east is to the top of what you're looking at here, was left zoned in the R20 classification. It is zoned R20. It's 50 foot in width. There's a 40-foot undisturbed natural buffer that is there, and then there's another 10-foot setback or a 50-foot setback concurrent with the 50-foot strip, for a total of 50 feet, all zoned R20. The way the application was originally filed, it appeared that Kroger wanted to eliminate that, and that wasn't the intent. They simply wanted to go to the CRC classification. So we're making certain that you understand that R20 strip stays in place. And we made that very clear to the Brooks Chadwick folks as well, except to the extent that around our detention pond and where they'll be grading on their site, there's going to be an enhancement of that undisturbed buffer to disturb it for purposes of enhancing it, if you follow me. We need the CRC classification in order to provide Kroger with an ample but a conservative opportunity to expand, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. Your staff has recommended approval. We have received a letter of approval or recommendation for approval from the East Cobb Civic Association. I got a letter of support from Mr. Todd Thrasher of Brooks Chadwick, I think over the holiday weekend. Forwarded that to you. As far as I know, the only opposition we have is the gentleman that is here today who owns the BP station that's across Johnson Ferry Road from the subject property. We are asking for the CRC classification, and there's a number of reasons for that. If you look in the ordinance, you'll find that there's strictures under NRC in that anchor tenants under NRC are limited to 70,000 square feet. Well, the Kroger right now is at 56,000 and some change. So even a modest increase to Kroger, and there's no immediate plans to expand it, and certainly not to expand it to their superstore, but we'd like the ability to be able to expand it 17,000 square feet in the future. So that's an impediment under NRC. Junior anchors under NRC cannot exceed 20,000 square feet. So if for some reason Kroger goes away, we'd have a darn hard time being able to subdivide that space into space that would be usable, we think, at less than 20,000 square feet per tenant. Also, other tenants under NRC can't exceed 7,500 square feet, and the Ace Hardware, which is about that size, is thinking about expanding as well. And the maximum gross leasable area is 140,000 square feet. We're at about 108,000 square feet right now. I've talked with the members of your commission. I've talked with the ECCA, and in their letter of support, they have no objection to the CRC rezoning, assuming that it stays the use that it is now, which is for a shopping center, not some other use under CRC. And in privately talking with Mr. Peterson, he tells me that staff is constrained to follow the dictates of the future land use map, hence his recommendation or staff's recommendation for NRC. But I don't believe it would provide him great heartburn or the staff great heartburn if you chose to rezone it to the CRC classification. While this application has been pending, there's 2 stipulation letters. Since the opposition is light and I know what those issues are, I won't cover each and every issue, Mr. Chairman. We'll try to hit the more salient points if I could under that. First of all, Shallowford Falls is 14.04 acres. As you know, Kroger adds fuel centers in a lot of different locations. There's been some discussion as to whether it's appropriate to locate it on a street such as Shallowford. Remember, Shallowford is an arterial, as is Johnson Ferry Road, carry very similar traffic counts, each of them. Johnson Ferry, about 30,000 cars per day. Shallowford, about 25,000 cars per day. About 17 to 18% of the Kroger fuel centers are on rights-of-way or roads that are less traveled than Shallowford Road. So there's ample precedent for that. We have studied the stacking and queuing. I say we. Our traffic engineer has studied the stacking and queuing and finds it acceptable with the number of parking places with which we are left. With the fueling station, there'll be 7 fuel pumps. It's a 176 square foot prefabricated kiosk. It'll also have an EV charging station as well. There'll be an ancillary retail component, but very minor, and it's limited to the things that are right there as shown in the photograph that was sent to you yesterday. The fuel station will be lighted consistent with the photometric plan that we submitted and that you have in front of you. The signage will be new signage for both Johnson Ferry and Shallowford Road to add the fuel station component to it. The signage meets the requirements under the Cobb County zoning ordinance, and you're looking at hopefully photographs of those as well that we have handed out. Right now, we have 488 parking spaces. We will go down to 422. That's only 66 parking spaces less. Kroger itself is parked at a 4.5 ratio, which they say is more than ample. There are stores in Atlanta that are performing admirably at less than 4 and really less than 3. There is also precedent you might be aware of in that the the Walmart to our south that is contiguous to us is also zoned in the CRC classification. So for all those reasons and for the fact that we, from a traffic perspective, have provided staff with enough detail in order to justify this, we do respectfully request that the application for rezoning to CRC be approved subject to my stipulation letters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Sams. We'll hear from the opposition at this time. We had one person that raised their hand. You want to come on up and give us your testimony? Just give us your name, please.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Kashnood. I'm the owner of the BP gas station on the corner of Johnson Ferry and Shallowford.
Okay, go ahead.
There's 3 reasons that I oppose to this Kroger opening a fuel station on Johnson Ferry and Shallowford. Number 1 is that there is, within a 2-mile vicinity, we already have about 7 fuel stations. And number 2, in 2010, I applied for a variance hearing where I was trying to put a kiosk in the property, one of the variance hearings, and I got denied just because I was told by the board that there is too much traffic already. So I kind of wonder how come there was too much traffic at 2010 for me, but now it's not going to be 2015 or 2014 for Kroger, which I would think that you would have more traffic by now, if not much more. And the third reason, basically, what I noticed in the planning commission for the application is that it says that they would require 66 more parking to be in compliance.
Anything else you want us to know?
No, sir, that's basically it.
Okay, if you'll have a seat, we may call you back. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This is in District 3. That's Ms. Trombetti's district, so we'll ask her to lead our discussion on this. Christy?
Okay, thank you. There are really, I think, 2 issues here, and I've heard from probably 3 people that aren't here today in opposition, and their concerns had to do with traffic and whether or not the addition of the fuel station would increase any existing traffic congestion issues or create safety concerns, pulling in and out of the parking lot or conflicting turning movements inside the parking area. I think traffic and then the question of whether or not CRC is appropriate are really the 2 primary issues here. One thing I would like to address first is the opposition's concern about traffic, and I do remember that variance case. and the traffic concerns associated with that at the time. And it without going into the application, I think the request, if I remember it correctly, was to add additional uses to the property, not add more pumps or anything that's already there, but to add additional uses to what's already happening on that small piece of property. So that was a concern that's a little bit different than what we're looking at today. But I do acknowledge that, and I think it's true. There's a lot of volume here. There's a lot of congestion with the turn lanes, and we went over this a couple of months ago with just how the lanes are configured, especially between Johnson Ferry and Shallowford and Childers and Shallowford with the Publix across the street. So the traffic issues, I think, are a valid concern. And it was nice to get the traffic study over the weekend or yesterday. I don't even know when we received it. Everything has come so quickly. But that helped a lot, I think, allay some of the concerns about turning movements in and out of this parking lot. So with the information that's been provided and just with my experience on the ground, this is the shopping center across the street, and then this one as well, where I shop and drive back and forth several times a day. I'm satisfied with the traffic study information that tells us there shouldn't be any additional impact on traffic on Shallowford or Johnson Ferry as a result of adding this fueling center. I do think a lot of the people that would visit the fueling center are already going to be customers in the area, so it doesn't create any new trips like an additional use would create. So again, I think I'm satisfied with that question. As for the parking concerns, we definitely don't want to take lightly allowing someone to be non-compliant with their parking. That can definitely create issues, and we've seen that before. In this situation, I think, again, the information provided in the traffic study is very helpful, and it enforces what people who already shop in the area probably know, and that is that there's plenty of parking here available almost at all times of day. And the area where they're planning the fueling center is practically empty. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 cars there at any given time, and I think some of those cars park and go somewhere else for the day and then come back. Maybe they meet each other for carpool or something. So I'm not concerned at all about losing the parking spaces in that location particularly. I think the dry cleaners and the grocery store peak hours are different than the restaurant, which is there on the corner. And even when they're all open at the same time, there seems to be plenty of parking on the Shallowford Road side, right across from the dry cleaners and then out in front of the Kroger. So I'm satisfied, again, with the information that we are not going to harm the center or the shoppers by removing these parking spaces for the fueling station. The question about CRC versus NRC, again, this area has been a neighborhood activity center, and we have tried really hard, and a lot of people have worked longer than I have to make sure that it continues to be a neighborhood activity center and serves a neighborhood as it does today. So we don't want to take that lightly either. Mr. Sams noted that the Walmart is zoned CRC. I think what's happening, and it has happened down with the YMCA, which used to be a Cub Foods, traditionally grocery stores were neighborhood activity center or neighborhood retail commercial type uses because they were smaller. And over the years, grocery stores have just gotten larger and larger and larger. So they still serve a similar area and function, but the footprints of the stores are larger. And I feel like this one is a good store. It's a nice shopping center that they've continued to improve. And I really wouldn't want to do anything that would discourage them or prevent them from being able to stay in place. Again, as for serving a neighborhood area, we have grocery stores every 2.5 miles in this part of Cobb County. So I think this one, whether it's zoned NRC or CRC, would continue to function and serve the same area that it is, and wouldn't be harmful to our land use plan or zoning standards. So I'm okay with the CRC request. Similarly for the Ace Hardware, that's a good store, and I wouldn't want to do anything that would discourage them from staying in place and growing if they can in the future. So those are my initial comments. Unless there's some others, I can make a motion.
Mr. Hovey?
A question, could we consider going with a CRC, but for this use only, or a use restriction? And then if one of the more aggressive CRCs 15 years from now came in, then the board would get another look.
I'll ask. I think that's a good question. And I need to ask Mr. Sams. I just thought of something I need to clarify with him too, so we'll ask that.
That's actually in my stipulation letter, Mr. Hovey, to limit it to the shopping center use only under the CRC district.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did we have
go ahead.
buffering questions before?
They've resolved them.
So
and
they
they're
resolved the
set.
buffering issues? Okay, we're fine then.
Just to clarify, looking at both of these stip letters under use restrictions and also stipulation number 9 in the November letter, let's see. Okay, the November letters under stip number 9 says there'll be no outside storage, stacking of merchandise, etc. And then in December, it says the applicant will submit a photograph of the type of outside display. So is that a conflict? There's not going to be any outside display as far as storage is concerned.
As far as
can you
as far as
explain?
storage, for instance, the latest ice storm we had, Snowmageddon or whatever they call it last year, many of the fueling stations had the additive to the fuel and that you have in cold situations. So they would put that out there, motor oil
Okay.
things in situations like that. But there's no stacked up merchandise with signs for sale to grab the attention. And the store doesn't do that either, the Kroger store in the shopping center.
Well, and the kiosk would not sell anything.
No,
Correct. I mean, there's
I
not-
think inside it has bags of chips and Coca-Colas and things. If you go up to pay at the window, you can get. But that's the only retail component to it.
And no one walks into the kiosk. It's
No,
just
there's
an
one.
employee.
There's one attendant typically, and there's an employee restroom in there, and so there's no in and out.
Right,
There's
okay.
a window to deal with.
Okay, that's what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that these two letters didn't say different things about the storage.
Once we talked with the East Cobb Civic Association representatives, they were sort of in the same conundrum there. Even though I hadn't created this second letter, but we hope to clarify it with the second letter and the photograph that actually depicts the scenario how it looks.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question on limited uses or prohibited uses, I wonder if we should add used car sales. Would that even be allowed in CRC?
It will be a slot.
But it would have to, I'd like to add that, just to make sure we cover everything.
I don't
for
even
the
think I
future.
need to check with my client on that one.
Okay. So let's add, and I'll put this in my motion to add used car sales to the prohibited uses. Okay, those are the only questions I had.
The only thing you might do to solidify this is your renderings show a gas price of $2.19 a gallon. If you could guarantee that, the neighbors will love you.
That I would have to check with my client.
Okay, all right. Okay, Christie, have you made a
Okay.
motion?
I'll make one.
Okay.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of Z82 to the CRC category, subject to stipulation letters from Mr. Garvis Sams dated November 21st and December 1st. Also, subject to the diagrams submitted at the hearing today. I think some of that's part of the stip letter. All staff recommendations were not in conflict. And I'd also like to add the traffic study to the file.
Okay, and this is this use only, which was stated.
This use only, and also with the changes I noted to the stip letters. Prohibited uses would include used car sales, along with the list of others that's already in there.
Okay, all right, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second from Ms. Williams. Any other discussion? John?
I just have one question regarding the motion. Mr. Sams, is it in one of your letters that the R20 buffer is going to remain R20?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just want to make sure that that's going to stay R20.
It's in a letter previous to the stip letters, and then I reiterated that in the November stipulation letter.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so noted. Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? That carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Sams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners.
LUP 34, Derek W. Thomas and Teresa Thomas request a land use permit for the purpose of a hair salon and day spa in land lot 1154, the 19th district. The property is located on the south side of Clay Road, east of South Cobb School Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 34? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
If you raised your hand, that means you're probably going to give testimony, so come up and get sworn in if you would, please. Let's do this all at one time. If you think you want to testify but change your mind, that's okay. Let's go ahead and get you sworn in. Good morning. Go ahead and give us your name whenever you're ready.
My name is Derek Thomas. I'm a resident of East Cobb right now, and I have 2 other properties in Cobb County, so I like to invest in Cobb County. I don't know, should I just go ahead and say
Tell us what it is you'd like to do, what you plan to do.
Okay, I have a property on Clay Road, 1815 Clay Road, and I'd like to turn it into, it's a rental property right now, and it's been for the last 5 years. I'd like to turn it into a hair salon. And I've had 27 years of experience in this industry. I'm from Michigan. I had a salon in Michigan for 15 years. I'm a current owner of a salon for the last 2.5 years in Smyrna, right off of South Cobb and 285. It's called YJ Salon. That means to pamper. That's what we do. I'm on the board of advisory for the cosmetology at Chattahoochee Tech, which means we give advice to upcoming cosmetologists. So I'm very active in things like that. I conduct classes, higher education in my current salon now. We do seminars called Bridging the Gaps, which help people in beauty school transfer from beauty school into the real world of cosmetology to make them more professional and make their bridging the gap easier so they can become professionals in our community. I attend major hair shows and I conduct education. My experience and my staff's experience, we're all licensed according to state board. State board visit our salons and we're in total compliance with them. We do everybody's hair. We are a multicultural salon. We all dress in uniform, we're very professional. And what I want to say is, what I bring to the community is we try to do everybody's hair. I want to do all of you guys' hair. We want to pamper you. That's what we want to do. And right now, we do pastors and clergymen. We do our neighbors. We have police officers. Max Bacon, he's one of our clients. The mayor of Smyrna. Steve Ewing, Wade Ford, owner. We do his hair. So we really, really reach out to the community, and we have a very influential clientele. Steve Jackson of the Atlanta Falcons. So we just don't run any kind of business. We run a very professional business, a business that you can be proud of and the community can be proud of. Right across the street is South Cobb High School, And I noticed they put the sidewalks in front of my property now, so it's gonna make it look very nice and safe for the children to go back and forth. We plan on continuing to reach out to South Cobb High School and get them involved in apprenticeship programs and maybe hire a few of them for reception areas and teach them professional ethics. We're very concerned about the surrounding community, and what we plan on doing is not to change the character of the property, just enhance it, and which means that it'll still look very much residential. We have plenty and ample parking in front and back. The property sits off South Clay Road, very good. We also have a staff, like I said, made up of barbers and stylists, and we're all in license and everything. And another thing I'd like to say, our business hours would be very nice. We have very, very strict business hours. I'm a commission-based salon, not a booth rental. For those who don't know the difference, a commission-based salon is I run and I take control, my wife and I. We take control of how the business is ran. We dictate what products we use, the safety. Booth rental, stylists come and go as they want to. They come in and out, they can change hours. My hours are very strict. Tuesday through Friday, we open from 10 to 7. Saturday morning, we open up at 8 in the morning, we close at 4. We're closed Sunday and Mondays. I also plan on having easy access in and out the location, so it wouldn't be a safety risk. A quiet, relaxing atmosphere is what we have as well, and we're very, very mindful of our surrounding neighbors. Now, I noticed some of the businesses prior to mine coming from Austell Road to my location. That's not the kind of, no disrespect to anybody that has a business over there, but mine will not be like that. I think they should step their game up, if you would. No, I'm just saying it's going to be an enhancement, not an eyesore. Something that we can make the neighbors and even the people that have a concern, make them proud. I went across the street and talked to the pastor from the church when I was getting my my letters of request, and the pastor said he would look forward to me coming there and possibly coming to his church and soliciting his congregation, and I thought that was very nice of him. So it was very motivating. Another thing real quick is the integrity of the neighborhood will be kept according to the business hours. The floor plan is beautiful on the inside and pretty much the same with a few windows added to it, enhancements, and maybe the proper signage according to Cobb County. All things according to the development rules of Cobb County, and everything will be transparent. Any kind of permits we need to pull to redo the inside. I've been in Georgia for 11 years. I had a business in Michigan for 15 years. And I've always done things by the rules. I better knock on wood because I've been in Georgia. I never had a citation, a traffic citation. I'm in good standings with everybody I deal with. Anybody know Derek Thomas, they know he's straight. And that's where I demand my staff to be. It has to start from the top and work its way to everybody involved. And we look forward to this opportunity. And my wife works with me. My daughter, who's 38, she's a stylist. And I have other people that have been with me since I opened up my salon in Smyrna. And any of you guys are more than welcome to come by and see what kind of classy spot we have. You can sneak in on me and you'll still see that class. And it's important to have the support of the community. I would love the support of the community. And you'll find out it's not just one of those buildings that's coming up and it's going to be noisy and disrespectful. It won't be like that. We'll be different than any other location that's on that strip from Austell Road. However, the market strategy will be an experience for me because right now I'm on South Cobb and we have a lot of feeders from there. So I'm gonna have to get very creative in my strategies to get clientele. But the traffic is excellent. And I think I can bring something to the community that can enhance the community and make all you guys proud that you gave me a shot. And the industry, I think is needed. I think it's needed. I think everybody needs a place they can be proud of and have respect for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Okay, we'll hear from the opposition at this time. Come on up, folks. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Charlotte Sweetland. My husband and I have been residents of this community in this neighborhood for about 14 years. Long-term residents of Mapleton in general. First of all, I'd like to say I have no qualms about Mr. Thomas's planned business. It's just that I feel that it's not in the proper location. This is a strictly residential area, and you can see on the map, it's right next to South Cobb High School, and as well as all the surrounding community is residential in nature. In fact, I believe he said his property is a rental right now, and we see kids playing basketball in his driveway. The business, of course, as I said, would be welcomed in the neighborhood. I just think it should be in an area that is already zoned for commercial, which there's ample space available all up and down Austell Road. Probably within 2 or 3 blocks of where he plans and is seeking this rezoning. Our other concerns are it is a basic house with just a driveway. Our concerns would be parking. I believe his application said he intended to have 6 stylists. That would more than fill their driveway. I'm not sure where they would plan to park any customers. Clay Road is a very busy street. It's right across from the high school. There's traffic all times of the day. There's no street parking, and yes, they did just install sidewalks, which was great for the residents. It's certainly safer for the pedestrians. Other than that, I believe there has been in the past, and I don't know if it was just during Mr. Thomas's ownership or not, but I believe there was some other business that sort of tried to sneak in there and do some commercial business. My husband knows more about that than I do, but that was in contravention to the zoning, and they were eventually closed down. So that's all I have to offer. We would love to have Mr. Thomas, but not in this location.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, not seeing anyone else, we'll go ahead and close this portion of the hearing. This is in District 4. Galt, will you lead our discussion, please?
Certainly will, thank you. In looking at this application, we typically get applications for a salon where the property owner is going to have a couple of clients a week come in to their home. Maybe they're retiring and they've, they want to keep a few favored clients that they've done their hair for 10, 20 years, whatever. And in looking at this application, when I see 10 to 12 employees, that's a lot. 5 days a week, pretty much, full days, all 5 of those days. 10 to 15 clients a day, 100 per week is what was on there. Staff cars, 6 to 8 and 10 to 12 client cars. Delivery each week. Request for a sign out front. That all speaks to the intensity of the use. I think Mr. Thomas is going to run a great business. I mean, he sounds very professional, sounds like a place I'd like to go. But I have to agree with opposition that this just isn't the proper location in a house. This is a residential neighborhood. I know there's commercial just slightly down the street, but this really does mark a residential area. It's also directly across the street from the school. And I can't help but note there is a lot of commercial available right up the road, a block at the corner of Austell and Clay Road. So it's, there's, space available that this type of business should go in, but this really isn't it. So Is there any other discussion, or do you want me to make a motion?
Anyone else? Go ahead with your motion.
Okay. I want to make a motion that we recommend denial of LUP 34.
Okay, we have a motion and a second by Ms. Trombetti. Any further discussion? Okay, Bob?
I'd like to encourage Mr. Thomas to keep looking. You sound like the kind of businessman we really want to have, and there's got to be a place close by for you to sit. So keep working on this area.
Can you do anything for me? I don't know. Probably not, but yeah, I would second that comment by Bob. Derek, we'd love to have you in the community. Maybe if this is a house you own and you rent, is that, if I understood that right, maybe, no, we're not taking any more testimony. If that's the case, maybe you could sell it. That money could be used to rent a property somewhere nearby. But we have a motion on the table and a second. All in favor of the motion? So that passes 5-0 for denial. Thank you very much. John, what's next?
Rezoning case Z87, Augustina Onyek requests rezoning from GC to LRC for the purpose of a daycare in land lot 631 of the 19th District. The property is located on the north side of Milford Church Road, east of Austell Road. Is the applicant present? Let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z87? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Give us your name, please, sir.
My name is Tony Olatero.
Okay.
I live in Cobb County for like over 20 years. And I've known Miss Augustina for so many years. So we did a lot of daycare together. And Miss Augustina has a master in education. And he has a passion for kids, for children in the community. So he wants to reach out for the community all the time. And like I was saying, she has another daycare already that she has been running for like over 15 years. So by the time we found out this building, it was a grandfather's building. So they used to do a daycare over there. So the place was in Aso. So we look at it and say, well, this is what they've been doing a daycare over there for so many years. And they have zoning for like a GC. So we are kind of rezoning it to LRC. So, and the people from the community, they were so happy. By the time we were taking over the building, and they were asking us that we hope that we're going to turn it back to the daycare. So, which is, we tell them that yes. So we started renovating it, and that's when we realized that we need to do the rezoning from a GC to LRC. So the like I was saying, Ms. Augustina wants to give out to the community on the LA Foundation, so that they can train all these kids in this community. So we went to the neighborhoods to ask their opinion, and we have a lot of support. And as a matter of fact, we have some neighbors that says that their kids, their granddaughters used to go to that daycare. So we're so happy, and we're looking at the noisy there because we're going to hire more staff that they're going to be taking care of the kids. And the parking issue, we don't have any parking issue. We have a letter from the church that they said we can use their parking lot anytime that we want. So, and I don't want to talk too much. Like I said, this is a grandfather's building, and I'm going to appeal to the chairman that if you can grant our rezoning. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Tony. If you'll have a seat.
Thank you, sir. And I have a copy for you, from the church for the parking, or maybe.
If that's something you want to share with us, you can give it to the clerk, and she'll pass it around.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This is also in District 4. Mr. Porter?
You want to double check no opposition?
I'm sorry. We did have, I believe, no one opposed. Is that correct? Anybody in opposition to Z87? Okay, we don't have any on record, so go ahead, Galt.
Okay, I'm going to have the applicant come back up just for a couple questions. Do you know how many employees you plan to have and how many children?
Well, we're looking at around 45 to 50 kids coming up there. And we're looking at like 14 staffs, which is going to include the teacher, the director, the cook, and the assistant director. Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's see. I think that's all the additional questions I have. Does anybody else have questions for that?
Parking is the big issue. I went out and looked at it, got out and walked around a little bit, in fact, and I know you say you have an agreement with the church next door, but if they have something going on, that's going to become a conflict for you, I think. If you didn't have that church, I don't see that you have any room there to add additional parking at all.
Well,
And you're going to need at least 20 or so parking spaces. I don't think you have room for 20 parking spaces, and I'm real concerned about relying on the church next door for your parking.
well,
That's my big concern.
Well, Mr. Chairman, before we take up the building, we went to the community because the place was closed down, even though they used to do like the same daycare over there. So we know that, and I know that because I built daycares. I know that. So we need access of a parking lot. So we went to the communities, and we went to the church too. That can we use the parking lot? So we sat down together, and they said as long as everything is going to be in order.
So the house was previously used as a daycare?
Yes.
And did they
Chairman.
use the church for parking as well?
Exactly, Mr.
They
Chairman.
did? Okay.
Yeah, for like
All
over
right.
30 years. Yes, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments, questions? Golf?
Okay, you can have a seat now.
Thank you, sir.
I do think it changes the case a little bit that they have permission to use the church for parking. The other issue with the daycare, of course, is always noise. The property to the west of it, well, it's shown as PSC on the plan, is actually a residential house. And to the rear, there's houses as well in the RA5. It does give me a little pause knowing that it's been used, for a lot of years as a daycare, as to whether that's a suitable use or not. When we first read the application, of course, with such limited parking, there's no place. Basically, all there is a drop, circular turn in and out right now. And that makes it difficult. I kind of wonder if we could buffer it enough, to provide the neighbors some protection. And I'm curious to see if there's any comments from the commission on buffering it for the daycare, or if you feel it's just too close to the residential.
Christie?
I think the buffering idea is something to think about. The other thing is what the hours of operation would be. I think as far as noise is concerned, in my mind, as long as there's nothing happening here after a certain time of day that would disturb residents in their homes in the evenings or early mornings, I think the daycare sounds would be okay during the day. I used to live next to a daycare, and it was fine until they started doing things at night, and then that was a problem. So I think as long as the activities are limited to daytime only, and there's nothing after 5 or 6 or after hours, then that would be okay. And the parking situation as well, I think having shared parking with the church is a nice idea.
I'm not sure you can do a lot of buffering. The only buffering that'd be required would be behind it. You have a church on one side and a business on the other side, but behind it, you do have 4 or 5 homes that abut this property, right up next to it. A privacy fence and tall plantings. If you have children out, you're not going to be able to buffer the sound. You just are not. If you've ever lived next to a daycare, as Christy says she has, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't know that that's the answer.
I think the noise, this is an unusual, it's zone GC, general commercial, and you got commercial on one side and then you have a church. And in my experience, I've lived next door to a church and they're noisy. So, because they have activities going on all the time. So I think that we have to give him a use, but I'm concerned that he doesn't have enough room on this lot for the daycare. That's my concern.
Access in and out of here too is troubling to me. It just doesn't look safe. That's the only word I can think of. Limited parking, safety. Do we know what the hours of operation are scheduled to be?
To 5.
Bob?
You know, I'd like to reach out and fix this one, but I don't see how we can do it without the parking. And we can't zone over into some parking. We can't put a zoning stipulation over into a piece of property that's not in the application. If the church was a co-owner or put their name in their property as part of the application and it came back together, then maybe you could get there. Plainly, this thing can't survive without the church's parking and without the church's access to the road to get the cars. You know how we always do a unloading survey for these daycares where we show where the cars are going to line up while they're dropping them off and getting them. Without that parking lot, it plainly would not work and would create a real risk on Milford Church Road. On the other hand, it's been there. Obviously, we've got these great pictures. Somebody's already fixed it up hunky-dory. I mean, it looks like a great inside. My wife and I argued about the outside color, but the inside looks great. And I'd like to reach out and find a way to do this, Mr. Porter. I don't know, but I think it needs to have with it some co-sponsorship by the church. Maybe this is one where they take out the application and go get together with the church and see if they can come in with a joint application that would make it work. But absent a way to nail down the parking, I would have trouble supporting this. If the church ever shut them off, they and we and everybody has a big problem.
Well, the church has in writing agreed to a 12-month parking agreement, which will renew at the end of every 12 months unless there's a written, that's the way I read it, unless there's something in writing from the church saying we're not going to do it any longer. You're nodding, so apparently that's right. So they do have that agreement in writing from the church. I have a real problem with the way this is situated, so close to the street, difficult in and out. You can't park more than a very few cars in front of it. And Bob is right. Without the church parking, you can't put a daycare in here. And I still have an issue with that, even with the church agreement. Mr. Porter's the lucky one who gets to sort this out. I'm sure he'll do it, though.
You know, and it is a tough one because the parcel, and even though it's zoned commercial next door, it's really a residential house, and the person's lived there for decades. You know, so I think it's just a grandfathered or something. I don't know why it has that classification, but when the person moved in there, they worked for Eastern Airlines, so it tells you how long they've been there. You know, so noise, to me, noise is a factor, and obviously parking, and if we're to do something about noise, we're gonna eat up a good bit of the land with buffering. Parking, like you said, we're doing a zoning that's permanent. We're not doing a land use permit that we keep looking at over and over. So it's hard to zone this property permanently for that use with just an annual parking agreement. You know, as I think about it, I thought initially when I heard, oh, they have a parking agreement, that's good, and it is good, but it's something that can go away, but the zoning, once we make it, kind of sticks. So I think as much as I'd like to find a way to make this work, I think it's just too small of a parcel for this use. And, I certainly feel for the applicant because he spent a lot of money getting this ready. But it just isn't a proper property for that. So for that reason, I think I'm gonna make a motion to, basically follow the staff recommendations. So I make a motion that we recommend deleting Z87 to LRO, subject to all staff comments and recommendations, not otherwise in conflict. The building exterior to be painted with an earth tone color prior to any certificate of occupancy being issued. District Commissioner to approve exterior colors. I'm going to ask for a 20-foot landscape buffer on the northern property line in accordance with the county ordinance. And let's see. And the district commissioner may make minor modifications except for those that increase the overall square footage of the property, cause a reduction in the size of an approved buffer. That's my motion.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a motion for Z87? Do we have a second? I'll second that for discussion. Any further discussion? Not seeing or hearing any, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? So that is denied. Now, just so Tony understands, we deleted this, which means we changed it to LRO, which stands for low-rise office. That means, if I'm right, John, you correct me, daycare is not allowed under LRO. Is that correct?
It would be allowed, Mr. Chairman, but the way the staff recommendation, Mr. Porter's motion is, it's LRO for professional office use only.
So professional office use only, as staff has recommended. So you can have something there, just not a daycare, okay? We appreciate your presentation. Thank you very much. What's next, John?
Yes, sir. Rezoning case Z88, Wooten Lake LLC. Request rezoning from R20 to RSL for the purpose of a residential senior non-supportive subdivision in land lot 57 of the 20th District. The property is located on the north side of Wooten Lake Road, west of Shiloh Road. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z88?
Yeah, keep your hands up, folks, so we can get an accurate count.
Let the record show there are 11 people here opposed to this application. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
So if you're going to give testimony or you think you want to give testimony, come on up and let's get that done. He wants those pictures back. Just pass them, yeah, just send them back down. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Sams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, good morning. Mr. Chairman, for the record, my name is Garvis Sams. I'm with the law firm of Sams, Larkin, Huff in Bally, and I do not cut any famous people's hair. But I am here today representing Wooten Lake LLC concerning this application for rezoning, and I have with me today the two brothers who are principals of that LLC, and that's Brian and Greg Wolf. They'll just raise their hands, seated right back there behind Mr. Rosen. So at the appropriate time, they or I can respond to any questions. Also, we have with us today Mr. Abdul Amir of A&R Engineering, who is conversant with the traffic issues, and of course, contemporaneously with the filing of this application for rezoning, since it exceeded the 75 homes under the ordinance, we did file a traffic impact study with the application. The property at issue, as you can see on the monitors here, is a relatively irregularly shaped piece of property that is zoned presently in the R20 classification. It is 21.984 acres. It is on the north side of Wootton Lake Road, just west of Shiloh Road. On the future land use map, it's low-density residential, which allows RSL proposals such as the one that is before you today. What you're seeing now in your monitors, this is the site plan of the, as I mentioned, irregularly shaped piece of property. Your professional staff has recommended that the application be approved with a number of caveats and provisos, and we'll discuss those in a minute. We are asking for a rezoning from R20 to RSL for the purpose of creating an amenity-rich, like-minded community of folks, of course, limited to 55 years of age and older. I've handed out to you conceptual streetscapes, handed out to you amenities, common space, and some other elements, architectural elements of the homes proposed for the site, just to give you an idea of the upscale nature of what is being proposed. In a few minutes, we'll go through some of those as well. We've had excellent dialogue with members of the public. There are 11 here today in opposition, and I'm not sure if they're in opposition or simply have questions about it. I think there's been some confusion, probably caused by my clients and by me, and hopefully we can clear that up with our presentation today, and if not, but in the interim between now and the Board of Commissioners in 2 weeks. But I want to thank the participation of the people in the subdivisions up and down Wootton Lake Road. There's been several of them, not just the contiguous subdivision, but the ones that are all up and down the Wootton Lake Road corridor, and then individuals along the corridor as well. They took time out of their busy schedules to meet with Brian and with Greg during the course of the past month and a half. Based on those discussions and the discussions that we've had with the county's professional staff, and I might add, we started meeting early with the staff prior to this application ever being filed, just to make sure that what we were proposing fit in the confines of what the future land use map allowed. Also met with the district commissioner and the district planning commissioner before we filed, just to make sure that we were at least headed in the right direction with respect to the upscale nature of what we proposed. To understand Wootton Lake, you probably need to go back, if you don't mind, to that aerial photograph, or if you've got a zoning overlay, that might be good too, because there are a multiplicity of zonings all up and down Wootton Lake Road, and a multiplicity of densities. It is an LDR, but there's an RA6 subdivision, an RA4 subdivision, R15, PD, which is planned development, which you don't have anymore. There's even FST. And somehow or another, there's an office mid-rise zoning in the area nearby on the other side of Wootton Lake Road. See there you can see the mixed bag of zonings that you have in the general vicinity of the subject property. So we're consistent from a land use planning perspective in terms of we're having single-family owner-occupied residences. We have and are proposing a maximum number of 100 units. These are, of course, non-supportive residential units. In some of the emails that I've seen flying back and forth, there's been some suggestion that perhaps these are units that will house students, or because we're fairly near KSU, or these are units that will have full-time caregivers, and that's simply not the case, and not the demographic that we will be targeting. The total site area is 21.98 acres. Approximately 45% of this property will be impervious, which is well below the maximum of 55%. I want you to be aware of that. The houses that you see on the handouts that we've given you range in size from 1,600 up to approximately 2,800 square feet. So it gives you a good price point range, going from the high 200s to the mid to or the low to mid 400s in terms of price points for these houses. And if you look at what we've handed out to you, you can see that the varying architectural styles from European to traditional to cottage style. So I won't call it a mixed bag. What I'll call it is a very diverse but very cohesive, amenity-rich development at the same time. The architectural style and composition will agree to build exactly what you're seeing, and that's four-sided architecture. we'll be creating a mandatory homeowners association that will have strict architectural control, and through that we'll do covenants and, of course, restrictions. The mandatory HOA will be responsible for the open space, and as you come into as you come into the community, you'll have a great big green open space, and they'll be responsible for that. Of course, the clubhouse has been designed to accommodate the various amenities that will be provided, and hopefully the interaction we have with the community. The clubhouse itself, as presently designed, is about 6,200 square feet, which is about 4 times the size of most clubhouses that you see. Of course, the mandatory HOA is responsible for the signage, the lighting, the streets if private, and also irrigation. Subdivision entrance signage will be at the entrance to the street. It'll be ground-based monument-style signage. It'll be landscaped and irrigated. And ultimately, we may configure the entrance so that it will be gated. That's really more of a marketing decision that Brian and Greg will make during the build-out and construction of this as to whether it'll be gated, but they're conversant with the ordinance and regulations regarding gated communities, and have met with Chief Westbrook on site, not only with respect to that issue, but also with respect to the issues of turning radii on the rights-of-way and roads within the subdivision itself. As we go through the rest of my presentation, Cornelius has a flash drive I've given him, and I'm going to go through some of these just for point of reference and point of ease. If he would start at the beginning, it would be great. Well, what you're looking at right there, and as we go through these, this is how we expect the interior to look in terms of having houses that are, as you can see in this particular instance, cottage style in nature, with large front porches and an ability to be able to utilize the community and the streets. In many instances, the streets become a no man's land. In this instance, we hope to encourage pedestrian connectivity and walkability, and we'll have a walking trail throughout the community as well. Another example of a little different style type of house and a little different style of streetscape, but nevertheless giving you the idea of the architecture that we'll have within the subdivision. And the green space that I was telling you about, as you come in the entrance, I won't call it a boulevard, but coming into the entrance to the subdivision, this is what you see. This is the bird's eye view, of course, but the large green area for having either picnics or barbecues or celebrations, and hopefully maybe even things of a more communal nature in the future that can accommodate the residents of the subdivision. There'll be bocce ball. There's going to be a dog park. There's going to be gardens. No farming, just gardens for the residents, or areas for that as well. Go back to the first. We've asked for a we have asked for a variance with respect to the landscape buffer on the north of the property from 20 feet down to 15 feet, and the reason for that is because of the turning radius problems with respect to the rear-loaded product that we have. The variance was stated, or the requested variance was stated in such a fashion so that we were requesting a blanket variance for the entire landscape buffer. But we agreed by letter yesterday to limit that only to the rear-loaded product that you can see on the north, and as you can see on the western side of the property as well. We'll comply with all the recommendations of the Stormwater Management Division. There's a couple of things that I need to correct with respect to the analysis and zoning recommendations that emanated from Stormwater Management, and just, I think, Mr. Chairman, I'm out of time. If I may have just a couple minutes. Thank you, sir. The Department of Transportation has asked for a number of issues. We, as I said, had A&R traffic and engineering issue a traffic study, and but we've agreed to the installation of sidewalks. We'd like to do instead of the traditional deceleration lane with a taper, we presented to you in the terms of the stipulation letter a smaller road taper, and we've given you a drawing of that. We're asking for that. Private streets, if we do have those, if that is applicable, they'll be built to the county's design and detail specifications for public streets. We've got construction hours. These have become more or less boilerplate in terms of the construction hours and we'll agree to those. And also in terms of what may happen with respect to any change in, by virtue of a minor amendment that the district commissioner can make. In other words, the boilerplate stipulations that you have there. One thing I need to add, because this has come up in the community, and that is there was some concern whether these would be rental or not. Usually at price points that you have at the high twos and the mid to low to mid fours, you're not going to see a rental product. But we've agreed that we will have no more than 10% of any of the units rental, and we will make that, of course, a condition or stipulation of the zoning, but to go one step further, we'll put them in our covenants, conditions, and restrictions as well, so they'll be enforced by the mandatory HOA. I understand that there's another subdivision in the area where that is an issue, and they're coming back to the board to have that increase where they can have more rental units. We want to make sure that everyone in the community is aware that that's in no sense intended whatsoever. The stipulation letter, the supplemental stip letter I submitted yesterday corrects, I think, in the record the things we said from a stormwater management perspective that perhaps have been misstated. So with that being said, we do ask you follow your planning staff's recommendation, and you as a planning commission recommend to the board that the application be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Sams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Sams did go over a couple of minutes, so we'll add that to the opposition's time if they need it. So let's hear from the opposition now. Good morning.
My name is Julia Smith. I am a direct homeowner off of Wooten Lake Road, and I'm here speaking on behalf of several, and I'm going to try to focus on our main concerns. We're here today because we're not in favor at this current time with the zoning request to RSL with variances. Under the current known data and aspects of the project of Z88 zoning and variance requests, we are highly opposed to the zoning application. One being, and you just stated it, is that your zoning is permanent. And RSL zoning currently, as it is written in your documents of code, has a broad spectrum. You have 3 different subcategories of RSL, and personally I feel that when you're applying for a zoning, you should be applying for a zoning that is in direct correlation to with what you are going to build. Currently, if you pass RSL, you have opened the barn door for anything from RSL supportive to RSL non-supportive urban rental, and they are vastly different. All of these 3 categories are vastly different, and that's where I have an issue, because there's no sense in getting involved in a situation where it causes enforcement issues. And I just think you're setting yourself up. I mean, it's just a setup. This is what we've had with his reference to another subdivision. There were promises made. There was actually public documents that y'all have about mandatory HOAs and rental and all this, and there are no rules or guidelines to enforce these. So I have a problem currently, a major problem with the zoning in general. The other aspect in with the zoning is about its compatibility. When I was looking at the zoning map, I noticed you have RA4 for East Emerald and RA4 for Abington Green. Of course, I'm not sure why Abington Green was even considered because it's not off of Wooten Lake Road. I feel that you should consider subdivisions that directly feed into the road, not things that are not coming onto the road. And I'm not sure, even though it's zoned that way, that the house structure that's built actually matches that zoning. I'm not sure the difference between RA6 and RA4, so I'm just brought that question for it to be considered, because even though it's zoned, I don't know if it was built that way. And the reason why I say that is because the back properties, when you included Abington Green, those properties were originally proposed differently. The subdivision and I guess the condominiums or whatever's back there, Lake Mist, were zoned to be in different locations, and they were swapped. So that's why I'm not sure if the zoning was really corrected to go with how it was actually built. The other really big issue for us is stormwater management. That is a floodplain area down there. You have independent homeowners. Most of us have been there 30 years plus. And I'm extremely concerned about passing a zoning that could, the grade of it, just the grade of the property can devastate homeowners that have been there for a lifetime. I disagree. I feel like y'all should have your information to you prior to an approval rather than we'll find out after the fact about the drainage and water and how the runoff's going to flow. And there's a home, I use the Google Earth to Zoom, and there's a home on Parkwood Chase that I'm extremely concerned is going to flood out if you have all that water coming off that hill with no vegetation to really grab it and support it, that you're going to have some issues there. So I would rather see this postponed until some more data can be presented and there's evidence that you're not going to devastate the community as a whole with water. We've already had issues. That road has washed out twice, and I think once since I've been there, and I've been there 30 years, and there's another neighbor that says it happened prior to that. So there's just some concerns there that I really feel that needs to be investigated more before a passing of a zoning of this nature. You know, we already have, it's my belief that y'all should pass zonings that you don't have to have a whole lot of subject twos. Subject twos, there's issues with subject twos as far as enforcement. I think you should be comfortable with your zoning as it stands, and that's my opinion. I think that y'all require buffers on these kind of zonings for a reason, and when you start doing variances to zoning, the buffers, then what other further impact are you doing to those surrounding neighbors and such? And then the last one was the traffic data. When I looked at your analysis, I was extremely concerned because the data you were using was from 2006 showing on that thing. Even though the speed limit is posted 35 miles an hour, I would love to see the actual traffic data that says what the actual speed limits people are traveling, because I'm telling you, people are not going 35 miles an hour when I try to get out of my driveway. I could easily get out at 35 and I can't. So the traffic issue is a concern. Where I see this entrance and exit coming out of the subdivision, it has very limited visibility. So you add the extra speeds, you have a problem. And whether it's a 55 plus up community or not, I mean, even at a 55 plus community, you can have teenagers in that coming in and out of that subdivision. And with limited visibility, it just creates a problem. I really think the traffic needs to be looked at a little bit further by the county, just to see. We are now experiencing trucks. I mean, major transfer trucks coming up and down that road, along with the school buses and all. So that's my notes of interest, and I would like for y'all to reconsider before you just blanketly approve and send for a vote. I would like more studies to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Anyone else? Give us your name, please, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is James W. Pennington. I'm an adjacent property owner and president of the Arden Lake Homeowners Association. And I'd like to start this by thanking Brian and Greg Wall for coming out and visiting with our board on very short notice. They're very personable, very compatible, very sincere individual, and I applaud their efforts, and I have no doubt that they're absolutely certain that these plans are viable and will be produced exactly as they present. My concern is that you're zoning this from something, an R20, into something that is less determining in terms of what could be developed there in the future. So I question the feasibility of the project. Can you build 160 square foot homes and sell them, especially when 40% of those homes are 3,200 square foot duplexes? Is there going to be a temptation in the future as people come in and buy homes and contract to have homes built to build more of those duplex units, higher density units at lower prices to try to sell the property? There are economic considerations that may dominate in the future. So I'm very concerned about that. There's a question, of course, of whether you can maintain RSL zoning. I understand there's been some precedent that if you have 80% over 55 within your community, you still qualify under that particular federal statute. I don't know whether that's true or not, but if it is, it suggests that this is going to be a more normal population than a senior adult population. To that end, I asked Brian and Greg if they had developed any such projects in the past. And they have not. This is a first. So I asked if there are any projects in this area around Atlanta that we could look at that have a history that we could look at. They were not aware of any, and I could not find any subsequent to that. There was a suggestion that properties developed in Florida might be similar. I would respectfully suggest that the population of elderly retired folks that are independently wealthy in Florida somewhat trump that population in Kennesaw, Georgia. So I don't know whether they're going to be able to do that or not. I do applaud their enthusiasm, and I wish them the best, but I'm concerned that if they come into the community and this commission does in fact grant this zoning, that the commission is effectively joining the bet that they are making. If they fail, what happens? If someone else takes over the property and it's zoned RSL, what can they do? How high dense could this population become? And that, of course, would be a concern. I'm glad to hear that there's been some concession to the included request for variance of the property borders so that you only reduce the property borders that are adjacent to my subdivision. I'm not quite sure why that occurs or why that would be allowed. I know they're proposing a border with landscaping that is undefined and unspecified. We don't know what that will be. So I would, of course, object in the case that this is approved to that reduction in that border zoning. Finally, I've heard that the sewage for this area will be connected to our trunk line within our subdivision. Now, I have no idea whether we have the capacity for that or not, but it certainly is something that caused me a slight alarm when I first heard that. So I'm not sure entirely how viable or feasible this project is, whether they can actually do this or not. I'm further concerned about the 6,000 square foot community center and the affiliation with KSU and people on fixed incomes with homes that they may be tempted to rent out rooms in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. Anyone else wishing to testify to Z88? Okay, not seeing or hearing any, we'll close this portion of the hearing. This is in Ms. Trombetti's 3rd District, so she'll lead our discussion. Christy?
Okay, thank you. There's been a lot of ongoing discussion around this case. I know the applicant met with some of the neighbors early, and then as recently as last week, met with Arden Lake. We got some new information yesterday. I think we have an addition to the STIP letter dated December 1st. So I think as discussions with the community have gone on, they're working very hard to address concerns as they're made known to them. That's the impression I get, is that they're working to make this something that the community can support and that we can all feel comfortable with. So I appreciate that. The elevations and the streetscape and the green space, I think, are lovely and would be a nice addition to the community. I like the architectural controls. Some of the issues that were brought up today by Mrs. Smith and Mr. Pennington, I think, are things that we can discuss a little bit more, and maybe our county staff needs some more time to consider. Traffic is definitely already an issue. The dip in the road there right at the lake and the creek is pretty extreme, and there is a sight distance issue. I'm not sure if it's as far away from the bridge as this entrance is proposed, but it's kind of treacherous. Wooten Lake is not the kind of road that you need to be speeding on, and a lot of people do. There is some cut-through traffic, I know, commercial vehicles that want to avoid 75 or other ways to get to Wade Green Road have figured out that Wooten Lake is a way that they can get up to the shopping center at Wade Green and Hickory Grove. It's a great connector road, and it's a good alternative that a lot of people have found. So I do know that the traffic is something that they have rightful concerns over, and safety of people in this new proposed neighborhood coming in and out. The stormwater issues were addressed initially in our staff comments, and of course, that's an ongoing issue during plan review, but I think there's some new information that was provided recently from Frank Gibson with erosion control that has to do with the pond that's on the property that I'm not sure the stormwater staff has had a good amount of time to consider. So that's something that we need to be mindful of. The issues with enforcing stipulations and the question about all the variety of types of RSL that are available, I think is another valid concern. And I'd like to ask Mr. Peterson if you can describe a little bit about the different RSLs and how one varies from the other, and specifically how an application like this, if it were approved, could not necessarily become another type.
Sure. In the RSL code, there are different varieties of RSL. This particular one is for non-supportive RSL, which are typically single-family houses, duplexes, triplexes, or quadruplexes. Another type is the supportive RSL, where you see the bigger assisted living type buildings, normally 2 or 3 stories in height. Another type of RSL are the urban rental units, which are only allowed in regional activity centers, which this is not. So if this was approved with conditions to the site plan and to Mr. Sam's letter, then they could only build this product on this property.
Okay, so if it were, let's just say it was zoned RSL, subject to the site plan or subject to certain types of units only, that's what would be permitted.
That's right. They
and
cannot come back and build something different.
Okay, they could not build an assisted living, for instance,
That's
without
correct.
coming back through this process. Is
Yes,
that right?
that's right.
Okay. And that's what I thought, and that's one thing that would be caught, I guess. You know, before this was even developed, it would have to be changed to a different zoning classification. It couldn't be built or started and then changed midway necessarily because of the 2 types of products that would be necessary. But I think the concern about that is valid because there have been some issues in the area with this property being so close to Kennesaw State and the growth that we've seen there. There's some conflicts sometimes in terms of the residential uses, and the other application that was mentioned is just on the other corner of Wooten Lake and Shiloh, and that was a subdivision that was developed, or it started to be built right before the economy turned, and they've had some real problems with seeing that to completion and the rental limitations being enforced. So again, we don't need to be stipulating things that the county doesn't have a way of ensuring can be enforced. I think the stipulation that was proposed about the limitation on rentals clearly states that the homeowners association would be responsible for that, and I think the builder initially would be responsible for ensuring that no more than 10% of the homes were rental. But after that, the county can't really control that or can't enforce that kind of stipulation in this neighborhood or any other. But that's the root of the concern, and again, I think it's very valid given the location of this area so close to the university. I mentioned stormwater management, stipulations, and traffic. I think Mr. Pennington's question and point about the landscape buffer is good. If we could get a little more definition as to what would be planted there and how that would be treated, that would be helpful for all the people in Arden Lake and on Parkwood Chase as well. I have a few questions for Mr. Sams, if he can come back, please. Thank you. Like I said earlier, I think a lot of work has been done in a pretty short period of time to try to address concerns as they're made known to you and to your client. Do you think if we could hold this, or if we chose to hold this until February, we could get better clarification and more more of a comfort level? Is there any opportunity, I guess is what I'm asking, for this site plan to change? Or is this what we have on the table kind of the most that we can expect?
Well, first of all, the information is available in terms of the traffic. You have a full-blown
Correct.
traffic study, and Mr. Amir with A&R Engineering was out there again this morning. Not only do we meet sight distance going in both directions under 35 miles, but under 45 miles per hour as well. That's the reason I had him here today,
Right.
to quell any fears or to answer any questions you had on that issue. Stormwater management issues, the Mr. Gibson's report, the genesis of that was over 4 or 5 months ago. So, and we submitted that to staff at the original applicants meeting. So I'm not sure of the disparity between stormwater management and that, but it's clear that that pond on the property is not state waters, and that we've looked at the functionality of the soil and the vulnerability issues, and it certainly compacts fines. So traffic, I won't say it's not an issue because it is in your eyes. I understand that, but to us, we've addressed and resolved that. Stormwater management, they're just kind of, I like Dave Braden, I hope he'll like me after this, but the staff comments are just one step behind where we actually are. In terms of the landscaping, however, that we can certainly define and articulate and put into a formal landscape plan what it looks like, and that's actually something we can do within the next 2 weeks. And the reason I say that, Ms. Trombetti, is our contractual circumstances are tenuous in terms of the time allotment that we have. If it were January, I would immediately say we have the latitude for that. But I think what you want to see and what can be done in the next 2 week period, quite candidly.
Okay. Maybe so. Like I said, and I might have misspoke about the stormwater management and not having all the information, so if I did, I'm sorry about that. But again, we know that's an issue, and I'm going to ask Mr. Braden to come up and talk about it a little bit, just for the benefit of our board and anybody else who's interested in the project. The other thing that occurs to me is the overall intensity of the plan, which I understand is necessary. And to some degree, you need a certain number of units to be able to provide the types of amenities that these types of neighborhoods expect to see. But the density, given that the other neighborhoods, every other neighborhood that fronts Wooten Lake, if I'm not mistaken, is comprised of single-family detached units only. Yeah, that's something we may want to consider. I don't know if this could be detached only at a little bit less density, like 4 units per acre instead of 4.7. It might help it fit in and also allay any concerns about future misuse or problems and temptations to have people living there that we didn't anticipate, or renting to people that weren't necessarily anticipated to live in the RSL. So I don't know if the other planning commissioners had concerns or thoughts about density, but that was the only other thing that I thought maybe a little more time would help us work through. But in the meantime, if Mr. Braden could come up and help us understand or know where we stand on stormwater, that would be helpful.
Again, Dave Braden with the Stormwater Management Division. It was with regard to Mr. Sam's comment regarding the pond. I do have the letter from Frank Gibson, our erosion control, and also the administrator of our buffer ordinance, that has made a site visit and has determined that that existing pond is not state water. So that basically negates my comments as far as, well, they were really just the fact that if it was, that they would have to go through EPD permitting to remove it. So it was always my assumption that the pond was going to come out anyway, so it was just whether or not they would have to go through an EPD variance. And with Frank's letter, they do not have to do that. So I hope that clarifies that issue. So there wasn't really an issue between whether or not that pond was going to come out and whether that would affect stormwater's comments. So I always assumed it was going to be removed. Obviously, during plan review, there will be additional comments as far as if they're going to put structures over it. There'll have to be structural fill placed by and inspected by a geotech. So, of course, those are plan review issues. So, but not as far as an issue with the site plan itself.
Now, one of the things that we heard was that Wooten Lake has washed out before, and I know there's some problems with property on the, I guess it would be the south side of Wooten Lake, across from this. How will this development, or any development on this property, impact what's happening on the street? And how can we ensure that it doesn't add more water to places where they're already having
Well, as far as
issues?
Wooten Lake, the existing culvert under Wooten Lake, is a size, you can tell from the lake upstream, it's a sizable drainage area. So, and we've had some significant flooding events, probably in excess of its design capacity in past years. So I can understand that. The portion of this site that actually drains to Wooten Lake Road is very small. It's basically just the front portion there, and they would have to control any additional, but they couldn't allow any additional runoff to the road. So I don't see any problem with exacerbating any issues on Wooten Lake Road. I understand that we discussed there may be something on the south side of Wooten Lake that is associated with previous development or some issues there with the existing right-of-way and the ditch that runs along Wooten Lake, but that would be something that DOT and Stormwater could look at with that regard. But I don't see any issue with this development impacting on that. Now, downstream, which is, where's my site? In Parkwood Chase, which is just to the north of here, you see the floodplain. Can you turn the floodplain up? There it is. The floodplain actually tops Parkwood Chase. There are several homes in the floodplain, and my comments do reflect the fact that there are floodplain properties downstream, and that was one of the reasons I suggested that they, one of my stipulations was to increase the amount of detention on the site to mitigate those issues, because they discharge directly to that stream. So we want to make sure that we don't exacerbate those situations downstream. So, and that would be part of their, in plan review, they would have to do a downstream analysis to make sure that they do not do that. So.
Dave, there was a question originally about the percentage of impervious. Do they comply? Are they over the impervious, Jarvis?
No, they are not.
They're not in compliance?
No, they do not exceed.
They do not
Yeah.
exceed it. Okay.
My comment was basically, and one of the stipulation letter that Garvis had was, on their submitted plan for staff, it showed that they are at 45%, even though the allowable for this zoning would be 55%. And I was under the assumption, and I thought that was the statement that was made at the applicant meeting, that they were willing to stay at 45%. If the underlying zoning at R20 is 35%, so we're already going 10% over that, and if we go to 55, it's another 20. So if we're looking at exceeding, going closer to 20% over the underlying zoning, then we may need to look at some additional, maybe not just my requirements, but maybe a 25% reduction in peak discharge to try and mitigate that. So, I don't know if you're just looking for some latitude as far as maybe some lots, and that does become some problems when you've got lots that are having to meet the 45%. Whereas if the overall still meets it, but a lot goes up to 55, I think we would be fine. We would definitely be fine with that. So as long as the overall development, because there is a lot of open space proposed on the site, so as long as the overall stays at 45 or close to it, then I would have no problem with individual lots going up to 55. So yeah, which would be the still under the zoning allowable.
And Garvis, that's the intention?
Yes, sir. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anything else?
Go ahead.
Dave, I note where they're taking out the pond.
Yes.
Could you turn to that drawing behind us and show us where the detention is going to go? My concern is that we may be taking out houses with this detention.
Oh, no. The detention, they referred to the detention on the site, well, actually in the applicant meeting, they just didn't show it on the site plan. There's a natural draw right here that's perfect for locating a detention pond. That is where they're proposing to put the pond. And they would have to mitigate any loss of storage and water quality impact or benefits of that existing pond already. So, but yeah, that's the location that they're going to use there.
Thank you.
My only real concern was the fact that they don't own this. The stream is down here. They don't own. This is adjacent property owner here. So you're taking in almost the entire site and discharging it through a location that probably can't handle it, and that will be something they would deal with in plan review. They're probably going to go ahead and take it and discharge it directly to the stream around that property.
Or they
So
require a
yeah,
permanent
so
easement of some kind.
That's correct.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Very
That's
good.
all I had for stormwater. Go ahead, please. I'd like to hear what.
Yeah, I'm concerned with the potential loss of houses here if the northern buffer is reestablished, and I don't hear a reason for the northern buffer except that they said they wanted to put the road down there for the rear-loaded homes, but that takes away the buffer. And then the variance from 15 feet down to 10 feet between houses. And then duplexes in general. It just all those things taken together seems to me like by the time this thing gets through plan review, I think they could lose 10 lots or so. And I think, I understand the questions that you're concerned about. I'm concerned that we go ahead and pass this thing up to the Board of Commissioners and it gets stuck up there because it won't pay out for the developer. And I recognize that's his risk, and I'm not supposed to run his business, but it seems to me like I'm gonna have trouble supporting that variance between the houses.
Mm-hmm.
And I got trouble supporting throwing away that buffer, even though it's a shorter piece now than it was. I see no reason to do it, except to put in more houses. The only reason I see to throw away the difference, there's nothing on the land that tells me that it should be 10 feet between houses instead of 15 feet between houses, except to get more houses. And there's nothing on the land that tells me it should be duplexes rather than singles, except to get more on there. Now, duplexes, we've used quads and duplexes interchangeably on RSL. I'm not as concerned about that, but basically they're putting a lot more houses in here, and I don't see the reason on the land why that should be done.
And that could bring up an issue of guest parking. We're talking private streets. We're talking distances between houses. We're talking requirements. I know RSLs have a different requirement for on-street guest parking, but it's going to become complicated with this many houses.
May I
You
respond?
want to, yeah, address all of that.
Certainly, and it's if you've read the stipulation letter, you know that we provide the 0.5 units, or the 0.5 spaces per unit, so we have sufficient guest parking, and we checked with the chief with respect to the manner in which they would be parked on the street in a parallel fashion, and he is fine with that as well. As far as the mixture of products, Mr. Hovey, it's not a matter of maxing it out at all. It's a matter of approaching the demographics that we have, because this particular demographic, we have to go from the high 200s to the low to mid 400s. You have to have a range in price points. If you don't have that, that could be why the other RSL that didn't make it before the crash didn't make it, because it didn't have that kind of range. You've got to have the range, you've got to have the diversity in the architectural style and composition, like you've seen, and the style of the homes. And then, but at the same time, you think we packed it in, but if you look at the inordinate amount of open space we truly haven't. We're at 45% coverage right now, which is incredibly low for an RSL. Any that I've seen come before this board. Thanks, sir.
Garvis, before you get too far away, do we have sewer capacity available?
Yes,
One
sir.
of the speakers said they didn't think you did. Do
I'll,
you?
of course, defer to Mr. Davidson, but my understanding is there's capacity.
Okay. Tim, you can nod.
He's nodding
Okay.
affirmatively.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, and the information about the 6-year-old traffic information, we have someone here with 1-hour-old traffic information if you want to hear from him.
That would be helpful, actually. Mr. Amir, thank you for providing this study and the other information on our other case this morning in such a short time frame.
You're
What
welcome.
can you tell us about your study and the data from 2006 versus what you have?
Give us your name and tell
Thank
us.
you.
Tell
My
us
name
who
is
you're with.
Abdul Amer. I'm traffic engineer with A&R Engineering. I was asked to do a traffic study for this project, and as part of the project, we collected data in August of this year, and couple of issues that were mentioned earlier related to side distance. I was out there to verify the side distance at the proposed driveway location, and we found, looking to the left as you exit the proposed entrance, we have an available side distance of 580 feet, and to the right about 520 feet. I understand the road does vertical curves there, but we do have adequate side distance there. The posted speed limit is 35 miles an hour. You need 390 feet according to standards in both directions, so we have substantially more than that. Even for a speed of 45, you have adequate distance for a little more than 45. So that's, for 45 you need approximately 490 feet, so we have 520 and 580 looking to the left and right. The levels of service at the intersections we studied operate adequately during peak hours, and we have done some analysis and offered recommendations on turn lanes as well. Point to be noted, the amount of traffic generated by proposed 100 units of this type of use is substantially less than 75 single-family lots. Matter of fact, almost half. Which is the requirement for installation of turn lanes and to do an impact study on those type of standards. But since the number 100 seems higher than 75, study was done. But again, the requirements for turn lane installations and studies, if you look at the amount of traffic this generates, it's just slightly more than half of what 75 lots would generate, just to give a magnitude.
Less than half.
Just higher than half.
Oh, higher than half.
Just
Okay,
higher than
yes.
half, so almost like 55% of 75 lots would generate. I'd be happy to answer any questions you all have.
I think the site distance was a concern, but also just the impact of the new volume or the new numbers of cars. And I think you've answered that question with the statement you just made about this project versus a 75 lot, single family R15 or some other standard subdivision. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What I'd like to do, instead of holding the case, because there's still some unresolved issues that may not ever be completely resolved in terms of, you know, whether or not the density is correct or the product is correct or those kinds of things. Rather than holding and asking for plan amendments, I'd like to make a motion, unless of course there's some other comments first, understanding that it's meant to be some guidance and hopefully more work can be done in the next 2 weeks to get this to a place where everyone can be more happy. Is there anything else that anyone else wants to say
I'll just
before I do that?
pipe in that I agree with the staff comments of no variances. So I'd like to see those houses a little further apart and the buffers back in place.
Okay, yeah, and the landscape buffer, I totally agree that that's not something we need to vary. I think especially since we're asking for RSL adjacent to a neighborhood like Arden Lake. But the distance between homes may or may not reduce the number of units. They can just attach more of them to provide that distance between the buildings, or reduce the amount of open space throughout the project if the 100 lots or 98 lots is really the goal. Meeting the distance between buildings might be able to be achieved at the risk of losing some of the streetscape and the appeal of the green space. So I agree with you on that, but I don't want to make that part of my motion just because I see that the site plan can be worked to get even more units if that was really the goal. So I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of Z88 to the RSL zoning, non-supportive only, that the final site plan be approved by the Board of Commissioners, all other staff comments and recommendations, no variances to the landscape buffer requirements, in the RSL ordinance. The stipulations provided in Mr. Sam's letter of November 13th and December 1st were not in conflict with staff recommendations or standards established during plan review. And that completes my motion. Just as a side note, I'd like to ask that the people here in opposition with the known stormwater concerns, please explain those to Mr. Braden or someone on his staff over the next couple of weeks so that they can look into those adequately. So that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Anyone? I'll second it for a vote. Any other comments, discussion? To me, stormwater is the big issue. I see that more an issue than all the other things that we've discussed here today. We have a pretty good track record, especially over the last several years, of our department, Dave Braden and his group, taking care of these issues at plan review. Christie's comment for you folks to get with Dave, the fellow who spoke, sitting right over here, you might get a card from him before you leave to express your concerns so that he can do another look at it, so that we do cover that. I think that's really a key point to this whole thing, the stormwater runoff issue. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? So that's going to pass 5-0. So you have some work to do the next couple of weeks. Okay, thank you very much. We would normally take a break about 11 o'clock, but we're very close to the lunch break now, so I'm going to recommend we go ahead and take our lunch break.
We're not even going to need a lunch break today, are we?
Because we have 5 or 6 cases left, do we not? Well, we can try. All right, we'll do that then. I'll defer to these folks. We'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back, try to get in maybe one more case, and then take a lunch break. So we'll take a short break.
I guess I had that cue.
Okay, folks, we are back live. We have 2 cases that we will do combined, and we'll do at the same time, Z90 and SLUP 22, and we're going to cover both of those in one hearing because they really are one and the same. A SLUP is required for this along with the zoning. We'll try to get this one done, and then we will take a lunch break. So we'll just do these 2 cases, Z90, SLUP 22, and then we'll take a lunch break for 1 hour.
Okay, rezoning case Z90, Magellan Pipeline Company, LP, requesting rezoning from GC, HI, and R20 to HI for the purpose of petroleum operations in land lots 839 and 864 of the 19th District. The property is located on the west side of Anderson Farm Road, south of Powder Springs Road, on the northerly side of Ewing Road, at the terminus of Elm Street, and at the terminus of Ash Street. Additionally, here, SLEP 22, Magellan Pipeline Company LP, requesting a special land use permit for the purpose of complementing area petroleum operations and enhancing gasoline supply in land lots 839 and 864 of the 19th District. The property is located on the west side of Anderson Farm Road, south of Powder Springs Road, and on the northerly side of Ewing Road, at the terminus of Elm Street and at the terminus of Ash Street. Earlier, there was one person opposed to both applications. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Okay, Mr. Moore, when you're ready.
Great, thank you. And again, Kevin Moore here on behalf of Colonial Pipeline and Magellan Pipeline in this application, dual applications, application for rezoning as well as an application for a special land use permit, given the nature of the proposed use. So I'll give a single presentation because really they're really hand in glove together as far as this application is considered. First, I wanted to show you the snapshot of the zonings of this property because it's a little confusing if you look at the zoning map. It might take you a couple of minutes. This property is 58 acres. It's comprised of an R20 tract, a heavy industrial tract, and then a sliver of general commercial. And you have a little difficulty finding the general commercial. If you'll see on where it actually says with the arrow site, that's part of the site, which is zoned general commercial, but it's grandfathered residential that's adjacent to the west that's actually zoned general commercial. And yet those are homes and single family lots, but they're all zoned general commercial. In addition, you'll see that the R20 tract is sitting there located adjacent to HI and behind NRC and CRC tracts that front on Powder Springs Road. This property is located just south of the intersection of Anderson Farm on Anderson Farm Road and this intersection with Powder Springs Road. It's across the street from the heavy industrial tract that is the Colonial Pipeline tract that a lot of you would be familiar with, especially if you've spent any time in this area or any time on this planning commission. As you've seen Colonial come in through the years, over a number of years, as they have added facilities to what is referred to probably accurately in the staff comments as the tank farm. If you're not aware, Atlanta, in particular right here, Colonial Pipeline, this is one of their major hubs for distribution of gasoline from the petroleum facilities and refinery facilities that are located on the Gulf Coast through Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and all the way up the East Coast to New England. So Colonial is how we all drive around and get our gas. And thankfully, they've done a great job through a number of years when they first put in their facilities here. What we're proposing on this 58 acres, which Colonial has owned for nearly 20 years or more and has planned for, are some additional facilities. Let me turn to that now so you kind of know where we are and what the properties are zoned. And in this instance, rather than a vanilla site plan, we've overlaid the actual site plan on an aerial photograph because it's much more, we think, accurate, as well as provides a better visual presentation of really where this is located. That is the actual proposed structures and proposed development or improvements to the property. And more importantly, I think what's not being really touched, which is why this is being proposed and staff recommended it to be site plan specific. But just to, again, orient you, you've got Anderson Farm Road here. You have up at the top here, this is Powder Springs. This is the 58-acre tract. Again, this is really the line here that separates the already existing heavy industrial property and then the R20 triangle piece here. What's proposed is this. You see the concrete pad that will have the two sphere tanks located here. What's being proposed now is for there to be a small building here for the office administration and office location here. These are where the trucks would pull in and unload their butane additive. That is what is being stored here in these tanks, and that is a butane additive. And I could go through the chemical engineering and science of this. Took the guy about 15 minutes. What I understood from it is this: it's a butane additive that gets added to our gas and makes it better. And that's what I got out of it. So I think what it is it's important enough for them to want to invest additional capital here to place this in the pipeline, to place this in the gas, so that it can be better for the consumers and better for us. And that's what Magellan does, is provides that additional additive that makes our gas better, and that's certainly a good thing. But that's where those two spheres would be located. Those are sphere tanks, and staff has aptly noted those would be no taller than 110 feet. And to give you some perspective, that's the size really comparable that is across the street at the existing Colonial facilities there. They've also recommended certain stipulations and conditions as it relates to a muted paint color and no signage other than identification signage as required by federal and state law. What you'll notice also is this distance. There's a huge circle here. That's the 1,000-foot distance from these two tanks. That's what's required under Cobb County ordinance. So when the question was asked, well, why, is this going to fill up with tanks? Well, no, they're here on the property at this location because that's where that 1,000-foot arc reaches to where there's existing homes. So no, they're placed there because you can't really move them any further. Add additional tanks or move these tanks any closer because you'll then be within that 1,000-foot requirement. But what that does is you'll see all of this existing vegetation and tree cover here is not being touched. What is being touched is area here that is largely open pasture as it is now. It was an orchard before, and largely pasture here and pasture here. You can see in this area that is where the proposed improvements would be located. And lastly, just to show you what, be both of them really, to show you what we're talking about in terms of the proposal. On the left, that is the unload or docking station for where the trucks would pull in. That's the extent of what we're looking at there on that site in terms of the improvements, other than the small office that would be located administration building there. On the right-hand side, as you see, a visual representation of one of these sphere tanks that is managed by Magellan. The applicant here, just so you can get a look at that and what we're actually talking about when you see or read in the staff report about a sphere tank. But that's what that the visual representation and picture of one of those actually is. And as you know, that if you've been over to Anderson Farm Road, there's plenty of tanks that are of this size or comparable size. Again, this is a site that would be, as is the Colonial and Marathon sites there, it is operated on a secure basis, operated on a 24-hour secured and staffing basis. Staff listed several stipulations or suggested or recommended conditions in its recommendation of approval. Staff has had a long time to deal and has appropriately dealt with and addressed the Colonial facilities, and this is obviously in line with that as well, and certainly consistent with, and again, like I said, it's part of those type of petroleum facilities that are there that carry gas from one end of this country to the other. On your overhead, you'll see now the extent of the Colonial facilities that are there on Anderson Farm Road, and how this would certainly just fit right in with that and be a complement to that. Again, this area is designated as a priority industrial area. You don't see that very often on our future land use plan, because this is what's always been planned for this area ever since Colonial first came in and began its operations here. And again, this will certainly complement that and work with that, and in fact, work with it very well. With that, we are in agreement with all of staff's recommendations, all of staff's comments and recommendations, and their suggested conditions, including providing the appropriate spill containment, noise and air pollution, fire prevention, evacuation, and safety plans. Those have to be in detail evaluated by staff at the appropriate time during permitting and plan review. But that's something that certainly is in place now with the Colonial facilities, and will continue to be in place with this Magellan facility. With that, I have plenty of representatives of both Magellan and Colonial here that can answer any questions that you may have. Certainly there are people here that can describe the chemical engineering involved in the butane additive much better than I can, but it is better for the gas. So thank you very much for your time here today.
You did good. You have 12 seconds left. Yes. I love it when a plan comes together. Okay, we had one person opposed. You want to come on up and give us your testimony? Good morning.
Good morning.
Give us your name, please.
My name is Michael Pope, and I live on Powder Springs Road, and I'm located probably 3/8 of a mile from this facility that's in question here. But anyway, we probably lived there, I don't know, 30-something years, I guess, something like that. And we're kind of in a dwindling residential area now. But our concern about that is several concerns. One of them being the noise because of the truck traffic. And it's noisy enough on Powder Springs Road. And I'm not sure how much more truck traffic this is going to add to that street over there or on Powder Springs Road. And I don't know if there's a Marathon, I think it's Marathon transfer station there also where they do gasoline, and a lot of truck traffic there. And I don't know if this new facility is going to cause that traffic to double or is there a representative from
We'll take care of that in a minute. Just go ahead and tell us what your concerns are, and then we'll get those questions
Okay.
answered.
Of course, the inherent safety concerns of such a facility also. And Mr. Moore mentioned security, and that's a concern also. And also, I don't know if this facility is going to have an odor to it, but the Marathon, the transfer station does. We smell gasoline at times, and always concerned about safety on that, and just that and the noise on up into the night, and that's a concern. And like I said, I'm the only one here that's raising any concerns. I don't know if the other people are indifferent about it or not, but apparently they are. But that's my concerns, and I just wanted to let you know. And I thank you for your time.
Good. Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak to Z90? If you're not seeing or hearing any, we'll close that portion of the hearing. This is in District 4, Mr. Porter.
Can I have Kevin Moore come back up, please? Just want to give you a chance to respond to some of the stuff the gentleman just raised. If you want.
Sure, I think his question was specifically as it relates to truck traffic. Truck traffic obviously will be truck traffic because you're going to be delivering the butane that will be then added to the petroleum as an additive. The truck traffic will be comparable to what is generated today by the Marathon and Colonial operations. It's not going to be anything that's not anticipated and planned. This location on Anderson Farm Road, if you note, you are just off the east-west connector. It is why it is where it is, because we have a major roads, Powder Springs Road to east-west connector to our interstate system, which is why it is located where it is because of its easy access to those major roads. So yes, is there additional truck traffic? Yes, there will be, but from our standpoint, that's what's planned. I mean, that's where you want to place these type of facilities, is where we've planned for it. And in this case, we have planned for it, and we have the road capacity there and infrastructure.
Okay. Will there be any type of odor that you know of?
My understanding is it won't be any type of different odor than you already have if you're standing next to a gas distribution and petroleum pipeline facility. No, not from that standpoint.
Okay.
Is it dangerous?
Can it blow up?
No, the odor?
No.
Okay. How many trucks? I mean, you didn't give us a very good answer there. How many trucks are we talking about? Do we even know that?
Yeah, we do. This is Ivory Hits with Magellan, and she can provide some the actual truck numbers. I just know I was trying to give a comparison from what he's used to seeing today is about what is going to be anticipated. Though I know that the number of trucks are more seasonal here than you would have necessarily with Marathon's operation. But I'll let Ivory talk to that. This is Ivory Hits with Magellan.
Okay.
Thanks, Ivory. Just
officially give us your name if you would.
Yes, sir. My name is Ivory Hits. I'm with Magellan and project manager of this project.
Okay, and how many trucks do you anticipate? And Kevin just said this was very likely seasonal.
Yes, sir, he's
Explain
correct.
that to us.
It is seasonal. Peak season time is in September, and then it trickles down through May. There will be trucks all year round, but that's kind of the peak of the season, and then it tapers off during that period of time. We average between 15 trucks probably all year long each day, up to 50 trucks per day. Our capacity of the site can handle that type of traffic, and that's what we're planning for.
Do you know the route that they will take? Will they come out the east-west connector, left on Powder Springs, and left on Anderson, or do you know?
That is most likely the route they will take. We have not sourced all of the supply yet, so there could be options from another direction. We don't own that portion of the supply, but that is exactly as Kevin said, the reason for the location.
Okay. That's all I had.
Okay. I think that's all my questions. Anybody else have questions?
While we have the expert, is it natural for a tank farm like this to have periodic releases of something that would be an odor?
No, sir. Unlike the tank farm, this is a completely closed system. That's why the tanks are spheroidal rather than just a circle tank. And so everything is completely enclosed inside the sphere. And so the product always stays in. There's no emissions from it, unless you're doing maintenance or something like that. There would be nothing.
Okay, so this is better than a field full of cows.
Let the record reflect that comment by Mr. Hovey.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well, if that's all, I think in looking at this, I think the important point was that the tanks are placed close to Anderson Farm Road because they have to meet the Cobb County ordinance of 1,000 feet, which is far greater than the federal requirements. There was a small set of circles on that diagram. That's the federal requirements and state requirements. So the Cobb County is far more stringent, just to have a little extra protection for the neighbors and that. So with that, I think I'm, fine with with this. I think it's a good addition. It's something that's going to help burn cleaner gas and more fuel efficient gas around the whole metro area. So I think it's good for the community. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we approve. We recommend approval of Z90 and SLUP 22, subject to all staff comments and recommendations. That's my motion.
Joe, do we need separate motions, or can we do the two together?
You can do the two together. One thing that's important to note here is in the, I believe it's in the SLUP write-up, the staff went through and indicated all the findings that I know Mr. Porter's familiar with. So by incorporating the staff comments, you incorporate that. So again, you can do two separate motions or one together. It really doesn't matter as long as you just cover both things.
He's made a motion together, so we'll just let that stand. Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Hovey. Any further discussion? Not seeing any. Call for the vote. All in favor? Passes 5-0. Thank you, folks. Give us some good gas. Keep those prices going down. Thank you, Mr. Moore. We're going to take a lunch break. It's exactly 12 noon. We'll be back in 1 hour to try and conclude. We do have 3 or 4 more cases to hear. Welcome back, everyone. Hope you had a good lunch. We're ready to get started with a few more cases here. John Peterson, what is next on the agenda, please?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Rezoning case Z91, Tanglewood Development Incorporated. Request rezoning from R20 OSC to R15 for the purpose of a single-family residential subdivision in land lots 48 and 49 of the 16th district. The property is located on the northeast side of Jamerson Road, southeast of Hawk Trail. The applicant's representative is present. Is there anyone here opposed to rezoning case Z91? Let the record show we have one person opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Can I make just something? John, Excuse me, there was one other person here before lunch. Can we note that there were two?
Right, sure, there's two.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you. Again, for the record, I'm Kevin Moore here on behalf of the applicant and owner, Tanglewood Development. In this application for rezoning from R20 OSC, which is currently zoned, to R15. I'm going to turn straight to the site plan. It's a 12.83 acre tract. It's located on Jamerson Road. Here on the site plan, this is Jamerson Road, and this is the site plan. This presentation is primarily going to be more about a history lesson, which I think is why we're here in this application for rezoning. This 12.83 acres was rezoned in 2000. The request at that time was from R30 to R15 for a total of 23 lots. And basically this arrangement, at that time, the Board of Commissioners, not with the agreement of the applicant or the owner, who's the same today, rather than rezone it R15 for a total of 23 lots, rezoned it R20 OSC, though it didn't meet the requirements of an R20 OSC, but rezoned it nonetheless, deleted the request, and rezoned it to R20 OSC, and removed 3 lots in this area right here along this street, calling out that the 3 lots there would need to be removed, reduce it to a total of 20 lots at R20 OSC, and that would be denominated as open space. This request is to add 2 of those 3 lots back for an R15 zoning. Other than this area here where where we're showing lots 21 and 22, the rest of the site plan remains unchanged, and in fact the rest of the site plan has been approved for a renewed land disturbance permit with new stormwater and erosion management control having gone in. And none of the rest of this is changing or proposed to be changed in terms of lot sizes, arrangement, or development or layout. So while this is R20 OSC to R15 application, all that's really proposed is for these 2 lots to be added back in since they were pulled out in the 2000 rezoning. And wanted to now turn to and go through why we believe this application is justified. He's first going to show you the surrounding zoning map as I go through this and point out some to you. This again is Jamerson Road, and you see the subject property that's highlighted here. You have an area of R30 just to the south here as it extends back as you go to Wiggly Road. Then you see that this property is bounded on 2 sides and dominated by a large R15 subdivision here. Once you move across the street, you have R15 here in a large subdivision and R15 rezonings that have occurred over the number of years up and down Jamerson Road. And that's what we believe this property should have been rezoned to in 2000. But that was before all of this occurred. Next, I want to turn to this piece. It says R20, and I think that's important. This piece that's developed here, this tract located directly across the street, is zoned R20, but I want to turn to that if you would. And what this is a copy of the minutes from June 20th of 2006 of the Board of Commissioners. The Board of Commissioners rezoned that R20 piece that I just showed you, rezoned that and, quote, deleted it to the R20 category. The proposal had been originally to go to R15. It was deleted to R20, subject to a site plan. That site plan, however, has a minimum of 15,000 square foot lots and is essentially really an R15 disguised as an R20, or an R20 disguised as an R15, however you want to put it. But it is not 20,000 minimum square foot lots. It is minimum 15,000 square foot lots, and no lots were taken out for open space. And that was done in 2006, some 6 years after this particular subject property. 3 lots had been taken out by a Board of Commissioners zoning decision. Next, I'm going to turn to another piece. First, I'll show you where the next piece is. Going back to the zoning map, you'll see even further east on Jamerson Road, you'll see this R15 here. You'll see this smaller cul-de-sac property there that's zoned R15. That is a piece of property that was zoned R15 on Jamerson Road subsequent to 2000. And again, I'm going to simply reference the zoning minutes. It was actually part of the consent agenda to zone that piece from R30 to R15. Again, minimum 15,000 square foot lots. Again, no open space created, no lots removed, but fully zoned R15. You'll also note that the owners of that property, Charles Koninsky and Annette Koninsky, I believe Mr. Koninsky will be speaking in opposition. He, turning back to the site plan, was an owner of the property located directly across the street that was rezoned to R15 successfully. And then he subsequently, immediately after that rezoning, sold that property and it was developed. And on the site plan, you'll see that Mr. and Mrs. Koninsky own this piece. It's R30, located just adjacent to our property. That's located directly across the street from the property that was rezoned R30 to R15 that he was the owner of and benefited from. It's located directly across the street from the piece that was rezoned to R20, though it's really an R15 in disguise because it has minimum 15,000 square foot lots. All there on Jamerson Road, and that's only the part of Jamerson Road that's within a baseball throw from this property. And that's why we believe this application is justified. This property, out of all those properties that have been rezoned R15 or been rezoned to a category that disguises itself as R15, has been the only property where 2 lots or 3 lots have been removed and open space created for that purpose. This area is dominated by R15 or 15,000 square foot lots. Is there some R30 remaining? There's some R30 remaining, but the R30 in this area at this point is really the spot zoning, not the R15. We believe, therefore, that this application is justified. Is it just 2 lots? Yes, it's just 2 lots, but 2 very, very valuable lots in this particular area. And as a result of that, we believe this property has been plucked out, treated differently than other properties in the area, and not receive the same treatment as other properties in the area as part of the rezoning process, and believe, therefore, that the 2 additional lots are justified and that the zoning to R15 is justified from that standpoint. With that, I'm here to answer any questions, but we would respectfully request your recommendation for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Let's hear from the opposition now. Just give us your name, please.
My name is Charles Koninsky. I live at 2681 Jamerson Road, as you saw, directly adjacent to this property. Back in 2000, when Mr. Pearson applied for the R15, we, the neighbors all around, objected because we were all on R30. A compromise was reached. What Mr. Moore failed to say was the 2 lots that they want to build on are undersized and won't fit with the normal setbacks. So they're going to have to ask for a variance to put 2 houses in there. Mr. Olens proposed to Mr. Pearson that they delete lots 21, 22, and 23 and make that a green space. That is the undersized lot area. And also there is, by the state of Georgia's definition, a stream that runs through that property. It's a dry stream bed most of the year, but every time there's a rain, it carries a significant amount of water through it. That was another problem with putting houses on top of that piece of property. So Mr. Pearson was given a choice. He could accept the deletion of the 21, 22, and 23 lots, and he did accept that restriction, agreed to a green space. Started construction in 2005, and then, for whatever reason, stopped the construction, and it's been laying fallow for 7 years, 8 years, 9 years. So now Mr. Pearson comes back and he says, I want those 2 lots back. Well, actually it was 3 lots, but one of them was taken up by the detention pond, which only left him the 2 lots left. I can't argue the fact, because I don't remember all the zoning around that area, but I know we were on R30 and the neighbors were on R30, and across the street, the 4 acres that I purchased was R30. Now, the reason I purchased those 4 acres, and Mr. Pearson laughed because he couldn't believe I did it, was somebody was trying to buy it to build a subdivision across the street from me. And I didn't want to see a subdivision facing me, so I bought that property, and then I parceled it out so that the property across from me is, one piece of property is 1 acre and one is 1.25 acres. Someone else purchased the back 2.5 acres from me and put a subdivision in there with another piece of property and made it R15. I didn't make it R15. So the fact that I didn't want a subdivision across the street from me, I didn't expect to have a subdivision right next door to me on the other side. Maybe I bought the wrong piece of property, but I couldn't afford both. I think Mr. Pearson agreed to that restriction, and I think he should be held to it. And the neighborhood has been waiting for 14 years from the time this Z87 first was approved as an R20 OSC. And I think it doesn't matter that there's R15 on the other side and there's R30 on my side. It was zoned at the time and it was argued at the time, and this was the compromise decision that we all came up with at the time. Just because 14 years have gone by, does he get a chance to do over again? I say, I don't think so. This is my own personal opinion, and I'm speaking not only for myself today, but another 6 families who couldn't be here, who are also in Falcon Crest and on my side of this piece of property. So I thank you for your consideration. I hope you see it the way I do, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Anyone else wishing to speak to Z91? Okay, not seeing anyone. It's back to this board. This is also in District 3. Ms. Trombetti.
Okay, thank you. There was, as I mentioned, one other person here earlier today in opposition from one of the Tanglewood developments. And we've heard from neighbors by email, and you probably all remember this from just a few months ago, I guess, or whenever this was a previous zoning application identical to the request that we have today, and it was withdrawn. In this situation, and what I've shared with some of the people that I spoke with, you know, a property owner can ask for rezoning whenever they want, you know, within the rules set forth by our zoning ordinance. So we can't prevent people from coming in several times and asking for rezoning. But I share the neighbor's frustration in this case because we didn't have a stip letter the last time we saw this, and we still don't have a stipulation letter, which I think kind of indicates a lack of sincerity on the property owner's part if they're not even willing to put together a list of agreeable stipulations like what we're used to seeing on other cases. This property has not changed hands in all these years. It does have a reasonable use, in my opinion, and according to the staff comments. And finally, I think the point that Mr. Koninsky made about the 2 lots that they're requesting be added back, those are narrow, they're shallow, and would require variances which have been requested as part of the rezoning, which to me indicates that it is trying to put a little too much on the property. The current plan is a reasonable use, and I think everyone would just be happy to have that built out and this neighborhood complete. So I'm going to go along, unless there's some other comments, I'd like to go along with the staff's recommendation for denial, and I can make that motion. Okay. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend denial on Z91.
We have a motion. We have a second for denial. Any other comments, discussion? Not seeing any. I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor? So that is denied 5-0. Thank you very much. What's next, John?
Rezoning case Z36, Stacy Asby requests a land use permit for the purpose of a cattery slash pet dealer in land lot 375 of the 16th District. The property is located on the northerly side of Shadowwood Trail, west of Shadowwood Court. Is the applicant present? Is the applicant back there? Yes, let the record show the applicant is here. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 36? Let the record show there's no one opposed. Would the applicant please come forward to be sworn in?
My name's Stacy Asby, and I'm just requesting a temporary land use at my residence in order to place cats, which I have bred for several years for show as a hobby. I was informed by the Department of Agriculture agent that in order to sell the cats, I have to go through the process of acquiring a pet dealer license. And because of that, she said that I have to begin with the zoning department in order to allow the business license to be permitted in a residential zone. So that's, I'm asking what your permission for.
You have plenty of time. Anything else you want to tell us? How many? Where will they be?
Well, hopefully they'll all be in nice homes and...
No, in your house?
I'm sorry, what?
Inside, they'll be kept inside your facility?
No, this is a temporary situation. Because of my health, I'm not able to continue this hobby, and so I'm just trying to place the cats and rehome them. But in order to do that, I'm trying to recoup some money for that and sell them and help guarantee that they'll have good homes. And I'm told that because of that, it's considered a business, and so I have to apply for a sales license, which means I have to apply for the variance in a residential area.
Okay. Anything else?
Any cats?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any cats?
Yes.
In your house?
Yes.
How many do you have in your house?
There's about 40 cats right now.
40 cats in your house? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because I've been unable to show them and pet them out like I normally would.
Okay. Anything else? We may call you back up, okay? Okay, Stacy, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to testify to LUP 36? I'm not seeing any. It's back to this board. This is also in Ms. Trombetti's area, so Christy, it's yours.
Thank you. Just stay right there, if you will, because I'll have some questions. And Cornelius I don't know if you can reach the microphone. Did you just put it up there, or did you? Yeah. Okay. I wasn't looking when you set it down. In looking at the application before hearing what Ms. Asby had to say this morning, I read it as if this was going to be an ongoing breeding cats for sale situation, but it sounds like you currently have this many pets and you're looking for a way to find them homes but can't sell them without these licensing and so forth. So
correct.
That makes a difference. I'm looking at this information to see, tell us about customers and traffic on your street as a result, anything that might impact the residential nature of your neighborhood.
Essentially, nothing would change. I was breeding the cats for show, and so anything I didn't keep, which was very minimal numbers, I would have somebody come over, maybe 2 or 3 people every 6 months in order to look at kittens or cats they were interested in. Many times we delivered them to their homes or at a show, and that essentially would be the same. Because of my health declining, I'm not able to care for the cats as well or continue the hobby, and so it's my hope that this would just be temporarily have the business license for the amount of 2 years in order to give me enough time to place everybody.
Okay.
Stacy, you think it'll take 2 years to place 40 cats?
No, I certainly hope not. It will be worst-case scenario.
Are there other breeders that you're familiar with that might be willing to help you place these cats?
Yes.
So
I'm trying to work
less than
within
2
the-
years, but you're not sure.
Right, well, it was, I guess the temporary use was up to 2 years, and I wanted to allow myself, because I've been in and out of the hospital, and it delays things in trying to get cats placed, and at the moment, I still have to go through the licensing process with the Department of Agriculture, and I can't be certain how long a time that will take.
Why do you have 40 cats?
I'm sorry?
Why do you have 40 cats?
I was showing them as a hobby.
All 40?
No, because they placed a stop order on the home because they said I need to get a license in order to sell any of the cats. And so because of that, I now have probably 20 cats more than I normally would. I normally have about 15 cats in my home.
So you ended up with 40, and where do you keep them?
Throughout my house.
They're not in cages, they just...
No, a few of them are.
But they just sort of roam?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Do you spay and neuter?
Yes.
Then how did you get 40 cats?
Well, because I was breeding.
Okay.
So you had kittens that didn't get a chance to go anywhere as a result of your
Correct.
stop? Okay.
I had just had 3 litters of cats, and that's when I was informed that because of the regulations and zoning and everything else needed to be changed, and so they froze everything. So I now have about 25 cats more than I normally would have, which are now close to adults.
Okay.
Do you think you'll be getting any more cats?
No.
Okay, so, and the cats that you have accumulated over this interim period are just those that have been born to your own personal cats?
Yes.
So you're not running a rescue or a take-in from other people?
No. In previous years, I had rescued cats from other breeders who were in, for other reasons, health or finances, needed help, and I helped them and took in cats, but they became my cats. My
Okay.
cats are part of my family. They're my home, they're our pets, and we take them to shows and we show them, they're like a part of our family.
I understand.
Have there been concerns expressed by the neighbors?
No,
Complaints?
not at all.
None. Odors, noise, nothing.
No.
Okay.
No, nobody would even know, that I have anything different than anyone else in their home.
I can attest to that. When I drove the case, her next door neighbor to the left was out in the yard, and I just, we stopped by, and I didn't want to think I was casing the house or something like that, so I identified myself, and I asked him what he thought about this case, and he didn't know anything about the case, and he didn't know anything about the cats. So apparently, it's not much of a problem.
Even though the signs in the yard. Okay.
So it would be no problem for you if this board approved your permit, if we said that you could not accept or add to the cats. All you could do is get them placed.
No.
That's okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What I'm thinking is, this might be stretching. First of all, I think if we do want to recommend approval of this permit, it would need stipulations about the existing cats only until they're placed, and then no rescue. And I'm not willing to go up to 2 years right away. Typically, especially when it's the first time that we've seen a request, we'll approve something for a year just to make sure that it's going to work the way we thought it would work and everybody's fine. The other thing I'm kind of thinking of is denying the application, but, well, sometimes we'll deny but give a long period of time to comply. But in this case, you're not out of compliance with any county ordinance. Mr. Peterson, is that right? I think she's requesting this for some other purpose, not for zoning compliance.
Well, she needs it for zoning compliance, because she
Okay.
will have one or two people coming to the house to get these cats.
Okay.
So if you approve it, you need to approve it for a time period.
But if we deny the application with a long period of time to comply, that wouldn't help her
Yes,
with
you need
the
to
ability to
approve.
get rid of the cats or to rehome them.
Yeah, like
So-
I said, my intent is to get rid of all but the few of the cats that we'll be
That are
keeping
your
as
pets,
pets
okay.
as quickly as possible. But until I get approval for the zoning board, I can't get approval for the business license and the pet dealer's
Right.
license, and I can't sell any of my cats or place them other than the state licensed officiated rescues, which I have already given some of my cats to, and I would essentially have to either surrender them all over or keep them forever.
And you have put a lot of time and energy and effort in their show cats, and I can understand why you would want to do something other than just hand them over to you.
Yeah, I've spent 25 years.
Well, the information has been really helpful today. I think given that the neighbors, and this is a cul-de-sac, remember, so
Yes.
people next door and surrounding have ample opportunity to know what's being requested, and we don't have any opposition. I'm willing to make a motion with some stipulations unless there's some other discussion.
I
Comment?
just have a problem with 40 cats. I mean,
You can have 40 cats,
but that could be
whether
health
we approve it or
problems.
not. It's just
Yeah.
the being able to sell
But
them.
we've seen places where they go in, not that I think yours, but the one question I do have is, how many do you want to end up keeping?
I would like to get down to about 10.
And that would be permanently, you want to keep your 10?
Yes.
And are you going to continue to breed those?
No, I'm not able to anymore. I'm not able to show or do any of the hobby anymore, so there's no reason for me to breed.
Okay.
I'm working with the Department of Agriculture, with an agent, and like I said, but this is where I'm stuck.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think we have to have you somehow just
To be able to move
move and
forward
get to do
into
what you
finding
need to
good
do.
homes for them. Okay. Well,
You
like I
you need to
said,
be in full compliance, so with all of these permits that you're gonna have, because clearly you've been doing this for a while without any of that. You've got to come into compliance, and we're gonna have to be sure that you stay in compliance until these cats are
How
gone.
did she come to our attention?
Yeah,
She's been
that's
doing
why,
it for
that was a
years.
question I asked earlier. If the neighbors weren't complaining, how did she come?
She needs a business license so she can get her Department of Agriculture license.
she's following the rules that
Yes.
she
Okay.
needs to follow
So
to
they
be able to
just-
sell and
I see.
rehome them.
But she's
So
been doing it for years. How did
she hasn't been selling them. She's been breeding them and showing them.
According to the regulations, you're allowed to sell one litter, and there's some questions about the regulations also. 30 adults or one litter of kittens, and essentially I haven't sold. Last year I sold no kittens. I sold one, and that's pretty much about the rate that I've sold any.
This
Yeah,
was
the-
not a result of a complaint, in other words.
The application says it was. She marked yes, it's a result of code enforcement.
But
Is that inaccurate?
No, it was animal control came out for complaint, but they found no violations.
Okay.
It wasn't
Okay.
code enforcement.
Okay, good.
Okay. I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend approval on land use permit 36 for a period of 1 year. No employees, no signs, no outdoor storage associated with the activity, no rescue operation for cats or other animals, and that this be for the existing cats for the purposes of rehoming the existing animals, and again, for a period of 1 year.
So that means, Stacy, if this is approved by the Board of Commissioners, that you would need to come back in a year and, to tell us what's going on. So don't come back and tell us there's 40 cats still there, okay? Okay. So we have a motion with stipulations.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, that would be great. Okay, any further, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second, Galt, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of the motion? Okay, see you in a year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Peterson?
Yes, sir.
It wasn't.
LUP 37, Bonnie Phillips, requests a land use permit renewal for the purpose of weddings and receptions in land lots 572 and 613 of the 19th District. The property is located on the northwesterly side of John Petrie Road, south of Macklin Road. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 37? Is that one or two? Let the record show there are two people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Good afternoon. Hope
Hello.
y'all enjoyed your lunch.
Give us your name, please.
I did. Hi, I'm Bonnie Phillips. I'm the owner of the property at 2684 John Petrie. Oh, and I have a few more things to add to the file. So should I give them now? Okay. I am here today to renew my land use permit, which is required by Cobb County to hold paid events on my farm, namely weddings and receptions. I'm also here to thank the commissioners for allowing me to serve these families that have held their weddings here in 2014. The families also thank you. I thank my neighbors that came with me today and those that called in support, and to the 65 neighbors who signed my consent form and encouraged me not to give up, but to come and make my plea. I would have had more, but the cold weather made it hard to walk the streets after a while. The kind words and encouragement that I received from my neighbors was overwhelming. And talking with my neighbors, most believed that the weddings had stopped because they could not hear or be aware of anything anymore. The stipulations have worked that we had in place from last year. When Joel bought the property in 1981, there was no landscaping. There were tall trees and a big patch of bamboo. When Mr. Taylor bought the property, he moved out from Buckhead out there, bought 100 acres to get away from the city. He planted also the bamboo to block him from the street. The first thing Joel did as a landscaper, when he decided he wanted to landscape this property, he took the time and the money to dig about a 60, 70 foot, yard trench around all the bamboo, sinking cement in that area and blocking it from our property and from our landscaping. I understand the other neighbors have had to do some of the same things. Just to clarify that from the last meeting. There's something very exciting when a wedding occurs in a neighborhood, or it's something that most people love to see, maybe to get a glimpse of the bride, or it's a sign of hope, of happiness, maybe a time of remembering your own happy day. So to these neighbors, it was disappointing to not be able to hear or know that the weddings are still occurring. I had approximately 25 plus requests this year to have weddings at our farm. I specifically and carefully chose the 7 couples for the 7 weddings that I hosted. Basically, I tried to talk them out of choosing my farm for this year. to keep my number small and to test the waters due to all the stipulations I had to cover. I reviewed the restrictions that they must follow. I made them clear. The 7 that I allowed to use in my farm made it clear to me that there was no problem with them. Otherwise, I wouldn't have allowed them. The land use permit stipulations allowed a maximum of 15 weddings per year with no more than 2 per month. I had 3 in the spring summer season and 4 in the fall. That's a total of 7, half the number of what was allowed. I took, for y'all to understand, I took very seriously the stipulations that were established in my permit approval. But not only making them clear from the very beginning to both the brides and groom's families, having them sign that piece of paper, hiring extra people to make sure they were being followed throughout the event. Both families had to sign that piece of paper. It was made very clear, plus the sign that I posted in my barn. The people, I hired 4 extra people, including a Cobb County police officer who was able to process his paperwork in time to be present for the last 2 weddings. He wanted to do the last 3, but it took him a while to get the paperwork processed. Secondly, the guest numbers have been well below the 100 mark that was stipulated. I am able to double check that by simply checking the chairs, the number of chairs that are placed under my tree. Most weddings were from 60 to 85 guests. The cutoff hour of 9 p.m. has been observed within minutes. Thank God, that's helped me greatly. That's been a good thing for me. That's been because wedding days are very long. Music has been subdued. This primarily important stipulation was made clear to families that no bands, DJs, or amplified music was allowed at these paid events. Leaving my property at 9 o'clock would leave them plenty of time to go to a club or to attend Lizzie's and go throw down if that's what they wanted to do, not at my place. And by the way, the McEachern bands and drums are often louder than us. The Corky Kell Classic, normally held in the Georgia Dome. If you're familiar with high school football, if you've ever been to that, it's usually held there in the Dome. It was held at the McEachern Stadium the night of my last fall wedding, October 18th. Those bands that they hadn't completely overshadowed any music that our families had on October 18th. So anything that was heard that night was not us. And yes, I did post my sign as was required in my barn. So I followed the stipulations. 5 of the weddings went without incident. There were 2 problems encountered this year that I would like to address. On one summer evening, it's a long story, but it had to do with the mother of the bride's boyfriend. A family attempted to override me on the music that was allowed. When I finally shut the music down, the bridal party sang loudly. And so I did all I could do to keep that down that day. I apologize for this. I am sorry to neighbors that this happened, and I concede that was a mistake. I did get a citation from that. I talked to the lady who gave me the citation. I assured her it would not happen again. Everything went smoothly until the to the fall weddings. My little Lumi Sakakura's wedding, this is a Japanese and an all-American family. We're uniting on this day. People came from Seattle, Alaska, Tokyo, Japan, all over. I have never seen so much bowing in my life. But while the reception was going on in the barn, I was posted on my rock in the field, sitting on the eastern property line with my walkie-talkie in hand, listening carefully for any music that might carry into the backfield and on the eastern border. At about 7 o'clock, I walked away from the barn. Things looked great. Guitarist was playing soft dinner music. All was well throughout the evening. Lumi assured me there would be no problem. At 8:20, I want to tell you, it was like a knife stuck in my stomach. The laughter grew louder. I could now hear the music. I'm sitting in the backfield thinking, what's going on? I knew I was about to be lunch meat as I peered through the trees, and I realized Miss Stewart stepped on her back porch with her cell phone in her hand, waving her arms. I radioed my extra staff, shouting at them to pull the plug on the music wherever it was coming from. Shut it off. I said, shut it off. The response was this. The 90-year-old grandma, the 90-pound, 90-year-old grandma who had flown in from Tokyo for a granddaughter's wedding, was cutting a rug with the kids. It was a Kodak moment, I suppose. Someone had hooked speakers to a computer. I don't know what they did. It was reverberating off of the tin roof in my barn, and you could hear the music. I quickly called Joel. I was about to have a nervous breakdown. I apologized. I said, go apologize to her. I headed to the barn to cool the granny's jets. This 20 or 25-minute infraction of the rules ended promptly at 9 p.m. And once again, the barn was silent. Since that happened, okay, no speakers or music are allowed within the barn. Small speakers are used in the garden and behind the first turkey house, the farthest point from the eastern border. The last 3 weddings went without complaint. I want y'all to know I was a flight attendant with Delta for 35 years. For much of that time, I was a coordinator on L-1011s, the greatest plane ever made. And I was not a rule bender. I'm not a rule breaker. I'm not a problem to people. I usually try to be an asset. I apologize for any of this. I believe the stipulations have been a success, and the changes I've made, I believe I can, if you give me one more chance in 2015, it'll go without a problem. In closing,
you're out of time, so
okay.
Wrap it up if you can, please.
Okay, in closing, it's important to me that you all understand that I'm thankful for this year. When you agreed upon this permit this year, I seriously took the challenge to have weddings with no restrictions, within the restrictions allowed. Not only do I need the income for the, but I sincerely feel this is a great thing to have a place so close for the families in Cobb and Atlanta surrounding areas. And to quote the brides, there's really no place around like it. There's not. But thank you so much for your consideration. Again, whatever happens, I wanted to come and make my plea, and I appreciate your kind time. I appreciate all that y'all do. So,
Thank you very much. You went about 1 minute over, so we'll add that time to the opposition. Let's hear from the opposition, if we can, please. Good afternoon. Appreciate your patience. Hello, just give us your name, please.
I'm Dorothy Stewart. I live on Beaver Creek Crossing. My house is directly behind this property where the vineyards are held. On the last hearing, when the permit was given with the stipulations, I don't think they've all been followed. In fact, I know they have not. Still, the amplified music on more than the one occasion that she named. There have been people extended hours, maybe 30 minutes over. 9 o'clock to me is really late because I have a lot of problems. That's late for me for somebody to be in the backyard with the noise. And let's say about the there was a wedding on May 17th. Moderately loud, but I just left home. Just left home for a while. June 7th, that was one that was really loud. I called code enforcement, which they were not operating at that time, left a message, and I did get a response on that Monday. And I was told next time it happened, just call the police. I also called Mr. Porter and asked him to notate my call about my complaint. After getting that email, Mr. Phillips did come to my house, ringing the doorbell, knocking on the doors. I did not answer. did not answer that. There were events in July, August. On September the 20th, that's when the wedding happened with Lummy. There was some information left on my door. It was a bag, a goodie bag. My neighbors told me that Miss Phillips and someone had left it at my door maybe about 2 days before this event. And there was a little card in there with a little note from the wedding party, Lummy and I think it's Terry, whoever it was. So I did call that number that night to ask them just to lower the music because it was really loud. It was really loud. And after that call, I don't know whether it was from Mr. Porter, or email from him, or from me, but that's when Mr. Phillips came over again. Let's see. On October, Mr. Phillips came over again. I was outside raking leaves, and he jumped over the fence, and we started talking. And very cordial, nothing really bad. He asked me, told me that he was having an event that night, and I said, well, I know, because I saw your sign. He said, well, why you just don't like, I said, it's not that I don't like them. I go to weddings, but I don't like it in my backyard. That's all I said. I said, it is a disruption to me. I says, I'm in bed a lot of times, medication, whatever, and maybe that's why it bothers me. I'm getting older. It used to didn't bother me. This has been going on for years, and it didn't bother me, but now it does. It does, and that's all I said to him. I even asked him about the McEachin events because we do, we live 3 miles from McEachin, and you can hear it. The vibration from there, the noise over there with the amplified music, it's in my bedroom, not necessarily as if I hear the music all the time, but it's that sensation in my room. And that's what I told him. And it's just, he said, can't we? I said, you know what? I said, it has to be toned down. I said, I can't do it anymore. That was just my comment to him. And I just appreciate you for listening to my concerns, because it is, I'm tired of leaving my home for the noise, or going in another part of my house just not to listen to it. And I'm not standing out there all the time waiting for the music to start, because believe me, if it's going to start, I'm going to hear it wherever I am. And these are some of this is some stuff I even got off the Facebook page, comments about me with the music, some pictures from some of the events, a comment from even the one on June 7th, where there was a response from this wedding party that said she gave them a rating of what it would be if it was not they had to turn the music down because it was so loud. That was on June 7th. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart. Anyone else wishing to speak to LUP 37? Come on up quickly. We're going to run out of time here. Give us your name, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Linda Hooks. I live next door to Miss Stewart, and the Phillips property comes right up to my back fence. So everything she said was correct. The stipulations last year was that they notify everybody to let them know when they're going to have these events. I was never notified. Signage is still being used along John Petrie, so everybody knows that they can come there and have a wedding or reception. Now they have built a road, and that side music is still going on. They built a road that, now know Bonnie said that they built some kind of barrier, but that road has been in there, and now they use that road for cars to come up and park there. So not only do I hear the music, but I hear the cars going back and forth too, because the road isn't any further from the back of my fence to where Mr. Porter is. And let's see, what else did I have? Okay. And I think really, because it is in our backyards, if you ever were there, you could see it was in our backyards. They really need to move this business to another area. This is actually a business, and it's right in our backyards, and I feel like it really does need to be moved. Thank you for your patience, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Linda. We have any other speakers? Yes, come.
I'm not in opposition.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You need to be sworn in. It's all right.
Good afternoon. I'm Wendy Casarella, and I'm at 2688 John Petrie Road. I am the property that is the closest to the Phillips, just to the right. And it's disturbing as I hear these comments from the opposition, because I am the closest. And as the barn where most of the so-called music would be, it's facing my home. And I don't have one complaint about this. I think I'd have to be looking for it to actually think that it could possibly be a problem. The other thing that I want to state is she stated that she had 65 consenting neighbors. 65 people consenting that it's okay, and they're happy to have that there compared to the 2. I don't think you can make everybody happy, but I think the majority of 65 of us neighbors not having any type of issue compared to the 2 needs to be taken into consideration. And I think about my elderly grandmother, deceased at the time, but in Pennsylvania, years and years prior, there was one neighbor that upset her because she parked in her parking spot during a snow ban. She never let that neighbor get away with anything further. I don't think that neighbor could look at her right, breathe right. I think she was just always looking for something. And as I just heard that, it's kind of what reminded me of that. Every time I called my grandmother for 8 years in Pennsylvania, she spoke about this neighbor. So I think possibly this neighbor just might not be happy with anything. But I do know that Miss Phillips spends an awful lot of time, because I've seen her walking the fence and everything with her walkie-talkies, trying to go really with the stipulations that were put in place for her last year. So I just want you to take into consideration the 65 neighbors that are consenting to her using that as land use for her land use permit. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak to LUP 37? Were you sworn in?
Yes, sir, I was. My name is David Rawlings, and I'm within walking distance of the Phillips farm, but they are between me and McEachern. I hear McEachern band music all the time. I never even knew they had weddings there, to be honest with you. This was an occasion to meet the Phillips. Okay, they came around. Well, one of my neighbors came around with a petition to sign, and they said, "Would you yada yada yada?" You know how it goes. And I said, I got no problem with that. I don't see the traffic. I don't hear the music. I got absolutely no problem with it. I hear the people are at Mud Creek soccer field. I hear that. I hear McEachern. I hear the traffic on Macklin Road. I don't hear this. That's all I've got to say. Any questions?
We don't do rebuttal at this point,
No.
so thank you very
Thank
much.
Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and close this portion. This is in Mr. Galt Porter's district, so Galt, handle our discussion.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think back to when this case came to us a year ago, and we, had much the same opposition, and we thought, okay, they've been doing this for a number of years without really the right permission, essentially illegally. We thought, well, maybe we could craft some stipulations that if we made it smaller, more intimate events, did away with all the loud music and amplified sounds, that it may not disturb the neighbors anymore. And I kind of think that would have been the case if that's what had happened. The June 7th date is one where Ms. Stewart called me, and I called Ms. Phillips, and she said, I'll go down and make them pull the plug on the music. And I reminded her, you're not supposed to have any music. It's not a over and over, and it's, we'll just go ahead and step over that. There's not supposed to be any, period. And after that event, it was a while, but I started getting calls again about loud music. So finally one day in September, I was sitting at home and got a call. It was about 8:45 or somewhere in that neighborhood. And I thought, after I talked to her, I said, I'm just going to drive over there and see what's going on, see if it's really this much noise, because several times Miss Stewart just held out her phone so I could hear the music and noise. So I drove over there, and the music had stopped at that point. So I called Mrs. Stewart. She said, yeah, they cut it off about 9 o'clock. I said, well, let me come by your house just so I can hear and see what's going on. And she said, fine. And as I pulled up, Mr. Phillips pulled up and proceeded to get out and go talk to Mrs. Stewart. So I ended up talking to Mr. Phillips. And he said, well, we cut off the music at 9. That's what the stipulations are. We're supposed to cut off all music at 9. I said, no, you're not supposed to have any amplified music, period. And he tried to argue with me that, and I said, well, do you read the signs that you have posted on your building? He said, we don't have signs posted. You don't really expect us to post signs. That's what he said to me. So where I got that the signs aren't being followed was directly from Mr. Phillips. But we stood there talking, and it was about 9:30, and I could still hear a lot of people over there. We could hear kind of the roar of the crowd going on. Even though there wasn't music going on, I could hear the people while we were standing there. And I said, you're supposed to have everybody gone by 9, not turn down the music at 9. Everybody's supposed to be gone. And then we proceeded into October, and I got more phone calls, both from Mrs. Stewart and Mrs. Hooks, about the loud noise, music, so it's been the kind of thing where, they were given the stipulations and they haven't been followed. I mean, just flat out, they haven't been followed. So, from my point of view, there's no reason, having a land use permit's a privilege, not a right. And it's a privilege to be able to do a business in a residential zoning. And I think they've abused the privilege. So, does anybody else have any comments, or before I make a motion?
Go ahead.
Okay. With that said, I'm going to make a motion that we recommend denial of LUP 37.
Okay, we have a motion to deny UP 37. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Hovey. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? So you are denied your land use permit. Okay, John, what's next?
Yes, sir. LUP 38, St. Benedict's Episcopal Church, request a land use permit for the purpose of a farmer's market and land lots 694 and 695 of the 17th district. The property is located on the east side of Cooper Lake Road, on the west side of Atlanta Road, north of Cumberland Parkway. The applicant is present. Is there anyone here opposed to LUP 38? Let the record show there's 2 people opposed. All those wishing to address the board, please come forward to be sworn in.
Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon. Give us your name.
I am Brian Sullivan, Rector of St. Benedict's Episcopal Church, and I am standing before you again to get a land use permit for our farmers market. Since 2008, St. Benedict's has taken ownership of the property that we are currently on. We have basically saved a historic site, done incredible work there, both for the community and for those who come to church there. Since that time, we've also had a farmers market. Since 2008 moving forward, we've had many different opposition to what we've been doing. We've changed accordingly. There's been an ordinance now in place since August, and so I stand before you today to get that land use permit. We sent in a stipulation letter last week, and I'll just read some of the highlights from that. Our farmers market is for local vendors of homemade products and baked items, a seasonal marketplace to sell their goods to residents of Smyrna, Oakdale, and Vinings. We are going to have a maximum of 27 vendors. The market will run from 4:30 to 8 p.m. That happens after carpool, which our school runs until 3:45. We have a manager on site that will bring the vendors down as soon as carpool clears. All trash goods will be taken off the property within 30 minutes. They'll have a pop-up tent style that will be put up at 4 o'clock. The vendors will be responsible for all their permits. The manager who is just here had to leave to go work, but he's the one who checks on their permits randomly and at the beginning of each season. The church provides appropriate, easy-to-read signs, entrance, exit signs, parking designations, making sure vendors are where they're supposed to be at the designated times. The goods sold comply with a list of approved goods per the county code, which is 134-36. To ensure adequate public restroom facilities, we're allowing vendors and people who come to the market to come into the building just inside the middle of the building. There will be no loudspeakers, no bells or amplified noise-making systems will be utilized. And I'm sorry Mrs. Williams isn't here to know that not all churches make a lot of noise. As well, oh, did you hear that? Not all of us. We will not sell any firearms, ammunition, weapons of any kind. We'll occasionally, and I'd like to specify exactly how many times, we'll have a blood drive and bouncy houses. Last year we had 3 blood drives, and we had bouncy houses twice a year. I've got a map, and I'll show you exactly where those. Looking at the map, if you'll notice, here's Atlanta Road, and the vendors' tents are all lined up here. Having 27 maximum is as many as we will ever have. We typically have 15 to 20 vendors, and during that time when there's not as many, this is the area where the jumpy houses and the blood drive is parked. That'll be, again, the blood drive will be 3 times a year, and the bouncy houses 2. No alcoholic beverages will be sold or consumed on site. Attached drawings, which I just showed you, show parking, vendor sites, restrooms, and the like. All of this, of course, can be changed at the district commissioner's approval. And just to make sure that you all understand, the new 134-36 ordinance is exactly what we will be adhering to. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, Father Brian. Let's hear from the opposition.
Good afternoon. I'm Mary Rose Barnes. I'm with Oakdale Community Association. We are at a loss to understand this application. It was not until last Monday that the applicant finally submitted a stipulation that actually referenced an LUP. The first application was simply a rehash of the other business item from 2013 and did not encompass the farmers market code that was passed in August. The original site plan referenced 5 food trucks and a blood bank blocking the traffic lane, which is not allowed by fire code. As you can imagine, it was difficult for us to respond to this new application at the last minute over a holiday weekend. The applicant has ostensibly agreed to abide by the code. He just said it. However, the code specifically disallows mechanical uses of bouncy houses and so forth. I took an oath to tell the truth. Staff comments are based on the original application, not the one that I received last Monday. We do not know if the application includes the uses in the original Exhibit B, which would allow sales of books, jewelry, grocery bags, soaps, and a chiropractic advice. It was not included. We do not know whether they intended to include it or not. It was not attached to the stipulation letter of November 24th. None of these uses are allowed by the code. The last-minute surprise of a bouncy house and a blood bank actually came as a surprise. Mechanized rides are not allowed. Bouncy houses are inherently dangerous, as referenced by at least 2 cases of injury to 2 children in this country in the past year. They also represent attractive nuisances, which would be apparently run by non-licensed personnel. The proposed booths cannot accommodate either a blood bank or a bounce house. Said in the application, they would be, all the booths would be under tents. They did not provide a provision for spaces for the bounce house or the blood bank on the site plan. He showed it to us this morning. We did not know that. Still do not know that. It is our concern that they would actually use the other campus of their school for either a bounce house, a blood bank, or a blood bank, or perhaps parking in general. There's no crosswalk on Cooper Lake Road. The school is across the road from this school. Whatever would go in there at any time, certainly there should be no use of for any reason for any farmer's market. Since the property is grossly undersized for just a school and a church for the code, if this application should be approved, extra care should be taken to ensure the safety of patrons and neighbors. The church has applied for a farmer's market, not a health fair, street fair, carnival, or sideshow. The applicant is free to operate these aberrant uses at any other time if they wish to, not at a farmer's market. Any farmer's market at this location should adhere strictly to the code without use of the other campus for activities or parking. In the past year, this farmer's market operated in violation of the sign ordinances and without the requisite business license for its vendors. Regardless of the intent for charitable endeavors, the church is a commercial entity and must be operated within the confines of secular law. Also, any minor modifications by the district commissioner should exclude conflicts with the code or the stipulations. We respectfully request that any recommendation for approval include provisions that require the applicant to abide by all the precepts of the Farmers Market Code. And I thank you.
Thank you, Mary Rose. Anyone else? Okay, not seeing any, it's back to this board. This is in District 2. That happens to be in my area, so we'll see what we can do with it. Brian, you want to come back up, please? John, while he's coming, I want to ask you a question. The way the code, the new code, which was approved in August, reads that mechanized rides are not allowed.
That's correct.
Is a bouncy house a mechanized ride?
I would not consider that a mechanized ride.
I did not consider it one, but I wanted you to see if
Where you find
agree.
those are like carnivores or circuses.
Okay. Okay. The blood drive, is this the large vehicle that we see? Kate?
Yes,
So it's like a bus?
Yeah.
Okay, and you anticipate three times a year, I
Three
think,
times.
maximum? And the bouncy house maybe?
Twice.
Maybe twice a year. Confined to those areas that you indicated on the map?
Yes.
Okay. Parking is always an issue. Again, I understand that this is not a carnival or a fair. I assume that was never your intent.
No.
It's strictly a farmer's market. But parking across the street where you now operate a new school,
Right.
which I understand is doing quite well. Some of my neighbors go there and they love it. But is parking typically allowed on that site for people coming across the street to the farmer's market?
No, and the special land use for that site doesn't allow it.
Okay. So parking on that site will not be allowed?
No.
Okay, all right, that's good. And I think that's pretty much it. I'm going to make a couple of changes to your STIP letter, but I believe that's it. Any other questions for Father Brian Sullivan? Bob?
I didn't quite catch where your blood drive vehicle goes.
If it's in the corner.
Does it actually take the place of a couple vendor slots?
We have not had to date a total of 27 vendors. So if we do end up with 27 vendors, we will not have any activities in that area.
Okay, so.
Because that's a revenue source. The bouncy house or the blood drive is not.
Right. Okay, so you wouldn't be out using your other parking for the blood drive vehicle. It would be occupying space otherwise dedicated to vendor booths.
Exactly. And at the beginning of each season, typically each vendor, we know approximately how many we're going to have. So that's when we get our number.
Good. Okay, thank you.
You have a manager, I believe you called it, a farmer's
Yes.
market manager?
Yes.
And his job is?
To make sure each of the vendors knows where they're going to be, that their tents are close together, that we have our 20-foot fire lane, that everybody knows where to park, to help with parking, also to do signage and make sure that that's up in time, as well as getting the vendors down after carpool has ended.
And this is, same as last year, on Tuesdays? Is that right?
Exactly.
So it's only on Tuesdays,
Only.
not on the weekends?
Exactly.
And the setup is always after school is through and the carpool is finished?
Exactly.
So the safety of the children is always a consideration?
Number one.
Number one, gotcha. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to make a motion to approve LUP 38 for St. Benedict's Church for the Farmers Market, subject to staff comments and recommendations, subject to the stiff letter received November 24th, with a few changes. Let's look at stipulation number 11. At the end of that, it has to do with your blood drive and your bouncy house. I hope I'm using the right terms, bounce house, whatever. At the end of that should be a comma, which will be appropriately located as indicated on the site map. Now, the map we received did not have them located, so before you get to the BOC, be sure you have a current map showing where the blood drive and where the bouncy house might appear. So that can be at the end of number 11. Number 13, I want to add that parking for the farmer's market will not be allowed in the school parking lot, which is located on the opposite side of Cooper Lake Road. No parking there. I agree that it could be a safety issue. Number 14, which is the stipulation that indicates the district commissioner can approve minor modifications to these stipulations, comma, and add these words, as long as such alterations do not violate any county code. And I believe that will cover it. That would be my motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
So we have a second from Ms. Trombetti. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's approved 5-0. Good luck. John, anything else?
Item on your agenda.
Okay. Okay, we do have one other business item which we need to take care of, and it's approval of our calendar for next year. We've already had this before us one time. We have a final decision on all of the dates for our hearings coming up in 2015. So I need a motion to approve the calendar for 2015. As presented. Do we have a second? Second from Galt Porter. All in favor? So the calendar for next year is approved. We also have some minutes to approve from November 12th and November 21st. Any changes, amendments, additions to the minutes? Can I get a motion to approve as presented? Somebody? Anybody? So moved. So moved. Second? Second, Judy. All in favor of approving the minutes as presented? That's approved. John, does that do it?
There's one more thing, Mr. Chairman.
Please.
I want to thank Bob Hovey for serving on this board. This is his last meeting as being a planning commissioner.
That is right. Mr. Hovey is retiring.
Indeed.
How many years, Bob?
12.
12 years. He used to be redheaded when all this started, and he had a lot more hair. We're delighted that Bob was with us for 12 years. We're certainly going to miss him. We do have a new person who happens to be sitting in the audience. Skip Gunther's going to be sitting up here beginning real soon. We're glad to have Skip with us. We'll do that more formally, Skip, when you're actually sworn in and so forth and appointed. But we're going to miss Bob. Bob's been a delight to work with and a mentor really to all of us, and we'll certainly miss you.
Thank you.
Well said.
I will miss him particularly because I pass him notes.
Okay.
He did all this.